What is up, everybody? Happy Memorial Day. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 2-game NBA slate and 3-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Hope you all are enjoying your day, maybe barbecuing, laying out, and obviously, thank you to all the men and women who have served our country, are serving our country, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We owe you everything. Let's not forget the reason for the day. Joining me today, we've got Lindquist and Chris Spags. Guys, how we doing?
Oh, I thought that sounded like there was more that was going to come there, but I'm feeling good. I've been doing shows since early in the morning for the MLB, and now we get to talk NBA and MLB. What a joy it is! But I think it's fun. I feel like today of all days, it's a holiday day. If you guys are riding with us today, you are truly the strongest, the most degenerate out there. We're playing and not even going out when now you can. The world's open back up. You can be having fun. Instead, you are like us here under the bright lights, staring into a camera, talking to nobody to play some games today, and I think that's a lot of fun. So I'm happy to be here with our most loyal, our most diehard viewers out there, I would say.
Yeah, showdown slates, 2-game slates, 3-game slates. Oh, goodness. Like, even MLB, it's just kind of getting shorthanded. And what a crazy MLB slate it is for a 3-gamer with so many pitchers that it's like, I want to just play. Can I play 7 pitchers? That seems like a lot of fun. We can just mix and match that way. But having a lot of fun today. Just, a regular day for us, but definitely not a regular day in America. Thank you so much. As you said, we've got our guy, Dave, that's always in and out of the chat. And I always think about him being a guy who's in military and comes into the DFS space. So to him particularly, happy Memorial Day. Thanks for hanging around us degenerates.
I wore camo in respect, but now I'm like, is that
stolen
disrespectful?
valor.
Is that disrespectful? Like, I am not worthy to be wearing camo on this day probably, and I am. So oops.
I'm sure the YouTube chat would say, take it off, Kayla. So I think that would be a real win-win for everybody, I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you really want to show pride for your country, there it is.
Walked right into that one.
There we go. And we're off.
Oh, yes. And I'm back on the mainland with sufficient Wi-Fi, so it's good to be with you both again. Let's get started with today's show. As always, friends, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. Don't forget, get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. Only looking to play NBA DFS? Then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 or our $4.95 NBA weekly express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Next, we have our bad beats. This weekend's only bad beat was the beatdown Christopher Spags handed to his opposition on Friday. On the wings of Eagles named Nerlens Noel and Jason Tatum, he was lifted up on top of the highest mountain, a momentous 53,000 Friday that shall forever be known as the one true money time. Chris, how does it feel knowing from now on until eternity that whenever you're trolled on YouTube chat, you get the last laugh? Take it away, friend.
No, I feel good about it. And to be clear, I feel like we need to clarify this. I did not write the run sheet today. This is an Eric run sheet, so it's not me.
That was 100% you. Stop it.
Writing beautiful prose to myself.
Spags patting himself on the back there.
But no, I honestly, it's weird because I think people, and there's some jokes some of our fellow hosts on the channel made that I'm going to mention it a lot or brag about it. And in fact, it's the opposite where I'm somehow on some level ashamed of somehow winning because it's so hard to do. And I think too, especially the way that I won in particular, where it was seven lineups versus 150 lineups, in a 150 max. We know, we tell you guys this for good reason. You're just at a disadvantage doing that. And, it has happened a little more recently, but still to me, luck boxing is luck boxing. So I'm very happy to have ended up on the right side of that after pushing that boulder uphill like Sisyphus for a while now, but I'm definitely feeling good about it and not, running extra good right now. As Heather in the chat just pointed out, she tweeted me earlier, I had an Austin Meadows home run pick on the morning MLB show that she paid off with a bet on, which again, if you're betting things that I'm saying on the show, more power to you. I hope it goes right more often than not, though. I mean, we all know how that goes, but it feels good. It's just terrifying because, and I'm sure Eric can relate to this very well. When you're running good, the other side is never that far behind. And I'm just terrified if the bottom's going to drop out today when I'm putting in a lot of money on a short slate.
Well, you could also just, take the day off. That would be the other way to do it. Then you guarantee.
I don't think that was an
gonna
option,
keep
Eric.
that money. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I guess we want to support people to go and play, and I want to play this slate for sure. But dude, it was awesome to see, and nobody deserves it more. Actually, no, I can think. No, yeah, you're probably the only one who deserves the 53K there. So it was fantastic to see. So happy for you. Hard work pays off. Hard work pays off. I saw your spreadsheet the day that Puppet Lindquist gets introduced. I don't think that it's really any I think the two are correlated a little bit, first of all, but then also just kind of seeing the amount of work that you put in on your MLB run sheet or on your MLB data sheets the other day. It really just kind of opened my eyes to how much work and how much you do. I always feel like I work hard, but it's really amazing to know that there's somebody alongside me that maybe I thought was slacking off here and there and actually isn't. So congratulations. And let's just kind of keep it going. Don't overthink it. In the middle of a hot streak, you don't think about how the bat feels in your hand. You just swing it.
That was impressive how Eric turned this to make about him.
What? That was mean. No, I didn't. I just said
a little bit. No,
in what way, Kayla?
How he's working as hard as you are.
Oh, no, he's working harder. That's what I just said. He works harder.
I think you said as hard. You said it's good to know there's somebody working as hard as me, Eric Lindquist, the man who works the hardest.
Also, so much has happened since last week. I totally forgot about Puppet Lindquist, and I'm so excited. I forgot.
This is my Kayla impersonation from last week.
Not funny. I was freezing. I didn't know if I was still on because I was still moving, but you guys were frozen.
Whew,
and then it would kick me out and bring me back in.
It was funny because the first time you froze and it was like a bad passport photo, but the second time you froze and it was like you you're like a very I'm smiling, I'm happy. Like it was like a great photo the second time, but the first one was you looking, I would say vaguely like a Russian spy.
I didn't even have YouTube up because I had no Wi-Fi bandwidth. So that's good to know. I didn't even go back and watch. Probably not going to. It just upset me.
Great idea.
Spags, now that your money bag's over there, when are you taking us all out for drinks since we're all local here?
I believe the answer remains the same as before the show, Kayla. That's a firm never. I need to keep distance. Even though we live in the same city, I feel like I need to keep you guys never even hang out in public or in person, because this way I could still be mean to you on the show and never get that human component in.
Thank God.
Rude.
I didn't want to have to deal with you.
That's my sacrifice, really, for the name of content.
Well,
Yep.
Eric, Melanie, and Leslie and I will just all hang out then. It's fine.
Sounds better to me. It's cool. I look really cool hanging out with all the ladies. I feel good about such things. Big boost to my self-esteem. Spags sitting there with his dog. He doesn't need us. Callie's all he needs in his life.
Sure.
And Puppet Lindquist. He basically has you there anyway, so why does he need you in person?
Oh.
A version of Eric that puts out too, so really.
And let's head into our NBA playoff game twos. Philadelphia will be the team to target for the umpteenth straight slate, as a matchup with the Wizards is a paced up as it gets. With the Sixers eyeing the sweep, who are you depending on the most in your lineups, Eric?
Oh, we're going to start with me coming off of that. Okay, that's great. I just wanted Spags to have to start talking right off the bat.
Spags,
so this is
first.
This is a very interesting slate for a two gamer. First of all, you're looking at two road favorites that are basically, pretty significantly straightforward, the favorites. And Joel Embiid, you talk about raw points on a two gamer. So when we have had 4 or 3 games even, we've been going a lot to the mid-range, because what happens is that it's just harder to find that value on the bottom end. But now, if you get any of that mid-range to fail, you just want to be locking in raw points on this kind of a slate, on a two gamer specifically, which is why we're seeing Russell Westbrook and Joel Embiid at the top of just about every ownership projection that we have. It just kind of makes sense. At the top of the center position, Joel Embiid should be the highest owned center. It really shouldn't be close. 37% over on Fanduel. That's nifty. 45% on Draftkings. That's absurd too. But then you go down the line, Tobias Harris. He's definitely somebody that we've seen now, 2 45-point games plus in this matchup. 230 total. The Washington is as fast paced as it possibly gets. Going to Seth Curry at 4,300 as a means of salary relief on DraftKings makes a lot of sense. And then Danny Green's just kind of been somebody that you've plugged into lineups over and over again, because you need that kind of saving somebody under 5K who's going to be playing, 25 plus minutes. If this game stays remotely close, him, Seth Curry, all of those guys. I mean, the Sixers are the best team to target on this slate. I don't think it's really remotely close, especially now that Donovan Mitchell's back in action here. So it's play all of the dudes, mix and match them. And if you can find a way to get different with your construction by either not having Embiid, if you basically have one Sixer in your lineup, you're different already on this slate.
Yeah, I would say for me, I think the Sixers are going to be a core part of what a lot of the field's doing today. And I think the one thing I would point out, which is something that they were talking about in the TNT telecast of the Bucks Heat game when the Heat were down 3-0. And it was something that I thought was interesting because I didn't think of it because we try to focus on the data here, trying to take too much narrative stuff in mind other than the fact that like, hey, teams down 2-0, down 3-0, down 2-1, your back's against the wall. You're going to sort of play your starters as much minutes as possible. They're going to get as much run as they can handle in the hopes that you can extend the series and also not get to the really disadvantaged parts. But there was something that they mentioned on the telecast. I think it was actually Barkley that said it. So it might be the first time that old Chuck has actually made like a very salient basketball point in a while on a show. But he said like, oh, these guys don't want to go back to Milwaukee. They want to go home. And I think you kind of saw the motivation at that point where it's like, yeah, you're down 3-0. You're playing in your home court. If you're not winning early, you're not going to win that game because the motivation just sort of starts to peter out. I think that's sort of what we're seeing already with the Wizards. And then this spot, I don't see how they don't end up losing the series tonight because they just don't have the guys to handle it. Last game, Embiid called them out directly for not double teaming them, basically implying that they're just not even trying at this point. And I think, Washington will try because you still have Westbrook there. You still have Beal there. Like Westbrook cares too much. Beal cares, about as much as anybody else in the league that you'll find as a star player. But I do think Philadelphia putting it down, maybe there's some pathway here where Tobias Harris or Embiid doesn't get there. Maybe there's one where Simmons doesn't get there just because they don't see the full crush of court time. Obviously, these guys are going to be more productive because of a blowout, but maybe two of them are productive and not three. So I think trying to get the groupings here, trying to get your exposures elsewhere. I think trying to get some Seth Curry in the mix, a guy who could heat up and sort of make this a game that does become a blowout faster. I think that's one guy who I'm intrigued by today. But overall, I think you have to play some Sixers, but there are some like configurations like Eric is talking about here that can make you get different here. I think also play a little more logically into the narrative of just the Wizards probably have nothing left.
Well, we'll get to that right now. Washington's Russell Westbrook finally went for a 60-plus fantasy point game on Saturday, yet couldn't sniff the optimal lineup on either major site. So Spags, do you think that could change tonight? And do you believe the Wizards have any hope whatsoever of staying alive with a Game 4 victory, which you just alluded to?
Yeah, I don't think they have a shot to win tonight, or at least much of a shot. I think, I have liked some of these narratives that paid off, including the we were talking about on Friday with the Celtics, like buying in on teams while they still can win a game. And then, they do have the team coming in. Nobody's believing in them. Like, I don't mind that. The issue, though, is that people are believing in Washington here. There's going to be a lot of ownership going to them. So you're not really getting any extra leverage by loading up on the Wizards here on the field. I think playing Westbrook, on a short slate, raw points really do matter. And there is still, there's going to be some value guys that go off and get used more meaningfully, or that just don't project well and end up having one of those days. Like those bases are going to be covered, I think, by people 150 maxing. Hopefully me, but probably not. But I do think a lot of people today are basically going to have all these configurations available. So to me, getting Westbrook in the mix, I think is very valuable today, probably more than it's been at any point in the playoffs so far because it's just a 2-game series. But I think too, like Westbrook's one guy I know is going to give me full effort until the end of it. If the Sixers also are playing a little more half-assed like they did last game, I think it's no coincidence that was the game that Westbrook had his first double-digit rebounds last time out. I think that could happen again today. Westbrook gets his, but the team still ultimately fails. And I think that's the outcome I'm most prepared for.
Yeah, Russell Westbrook, it's a raw points thing for me, really. And look at some of this mid-range value that we're looking on. I guess a fun thing to be asking you to go back and forth on. So you're playing the big one on DraftKings here today. Let's do a little over-under of some of these guys in terms of like exposure that you'd want to them. Davis Bertans at 35%, over or under at 3,700 on DraftKings.
I think, and it's sort of tough for me because a lot of what's going to come out is from the sorting process based upon the ownership and all that. But right. I think Bertans, based on his price tag and how he's going to work position wise, I think it would be an over for me. And I don't like that at all, but I do think because he's 3,700 and should be starting, and one pathway for them to keep this close enough for the Sixers to be more viable as Bertans hitting some shots, I think that's me makes him an over.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is that there's some of these guys. So 3,700 for him. You've got some under 5K guys over on Philly that are going to be playing big minutes. There's those same shooting guards on Memphis that we've been taking random darts on, whether it's Grayson Allen, who's 3,600 down there, ended up playing 30 minutes and played pretty darn well. So you have somebody under 4K there. I think just locking in Russell Westbrook, making him kind of the primary part of your builds, along with Joel Embiid, but specifically Russell, because they're going to play him as much as he possibly can in this spot. I mean, the only way that he ends up sitting whatsoever is if they're down 30, and it's just pointless to have him out there with 6 minutes left. That's certainly in play. But even if they're down 20, why not just let Russ go out there, try to run it down, do whatever? I think he's just so secure. I think the minutes are so perfect. Like, he's going to go out and just do everything that he possibly can to try to win one basketball game. It might not be enough, but I think it's definitely enough for our lineups today.
I'm rolling with the Wizards tonight. Surprising no one.
Contrarian.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. 8.5 point dogs. You know what? You can slide into the old Slack chat and let me know if you want to have some action on that, Kayla. We got to get you involved a little bit in some of the betting circles that we have here. I think I'll give you 9.5 is what I'll do. So I will give you an extra point. That's not recommended here on OddsShopper. So yeah. So double digits. If the Wizards lose by double digits, we get to come up with some kind of a bit that you have to do on the tip off.
I'm not shaving my eyebrows, putting it out there right now.
I didn't say that. It's just a bit. You'll have to do a character or a silly voice, or you gotta join the team a little bit, Kayla. You got to do this for us.
Oh, you weren't on the day that I impersonated you, but I already did a voice.
What?
It didn't go well. It wasn't good.
I think it captured the essence pretty well.
Can I hear it?
No.
So you'll make fun of me behind my back, but not in front of it? That's cool.
Exactly.
What a quality human being. Thanks so much, Kayla.
Spags was my influence. Blame him.
No, obviously. I mean, that was a given. It wasn't like, hey, I mean, I didn't even have to ask that. It's just a question. I expected more from you, Kayla Knierim.
I know.
Disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
It was a lapsing judgment character. So unlike me. All right, let's get to the Jazz. They have piggybacked off some phenomenal outings by Mike Conley to take a 2-1 lead in their series versus the Grizzlies. Eric, do you think his production can maintain now that Donovan Mitchell's minutes are being elevated in the 30s? And who else are you targeting from this team tonight?
Who wrote this run sheet? Spags, you're the worst, dude. Just writing traps everywhere today. It's absurd.
No, it's not the run sheet. It's this that I can't read.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that too. Okay, cool. So we're going to see I got to think that I want to be lighter on Mike Conley today, except for on Draftkings, where I find it difficult at 7K, but I'm going to be playing a little bit more on Fanduel today. Mike Conley's sitting right next to John Morant, and we're going to see. I have to just assume that it's going to start getting more towards what we've seen for this entire season as Donovan Mitchell's minutes start to get closer into the 30s. So we got to 30 minutes. You got to expect maybe 4 more minutes here, kind of working his way up to the mid 30s, early 40s throughout the playoffs here, because they're going to keep rolling. But Mike Conley right now with Donovan Mitchell on the floor next to him, he's 1.03 DraftKings points per minute producer on the season, 1.17 without him. So it's a big difference. There is some disparity there. I want to be a little sensitive to the price over there. I think he's a little too cheap on DraftKings, and that's why you're seeing the ownership get there in such a meaningful way. But even there, I feel like I just, for whatever reason, I feel like it's going to run out on him here. And I want to find a way to be shorting Mike Conley up against Donovan Mitchell here as these minutes start trending up. Looking at the rest of this team, we know Rudy Gobert, the kind of monster that he can be, still sitting underneath 8K over on DraftKings. That's too cheap for him, but the opportunity cost at center is actually enormous with the two other pieces with Embiid and Valanciunas. So I'm intrigued to hear kind of what Spags is thinking about doing in terms of rotating those three around.
Yeah, I think Gobert to me looks like the best play in terms of the value metrics that we normally look at relative to salary. And but I think what Eric's saying there's a pretty good point too, where you do have Embiid, you do have Jonas Valanciunas, you do also have some other just constructions to get cheaper at center with maybe one of the Wizards guys. Like I think there's a lot of ways here, but maybe you don't play Gobert. But to me, he looks like one of the safer plays on the board, and really to me the best projected in terms of just that value for Utah. And I would agree with the take too that I just don't expect Conley to have the outlier day again as we get Mitchell closer to full health. We know Conley's been really effective on the year in court time without Mitchell, but I think as you get those Mitchell minutes come up a little bit more, you see Conley sort of starts to cramp there. And I also think too, again, another narrative thing, but Conley talked about how it was really meaningful for him to be back in Memphis again, playing against the young guy who's replacing him. And it's all that stuff. And I think that all that, that fun, good feelings, whatever kind of stuff for Conley, I think that was a one game thing for him where he might've pushed it a little bit higher in that spot because it is, a place that he played. He was meaningfully a part of both the community and the team there for a while. And now he's playing in the playoffs against him with, his replacement, seeing himself in the situation, all that stuff. Like there's a lot of poetry in that I think gets squeezed out when you get to the next game. So in this spot to me, I think Conley narrative wise makes sense. Data wise, I think it makes a little more sense. These guys are all perfectly fine tournament plays. You're going to have to play some amount of them anyway, no matter what you're doing. But I think if you were just making one or two lineups tonight, I feel like to me, just coming down a little bit lower on Conley, maybe a little bit higher on Mitchell seems like a good move.
The Grizzlies have their own sublime point guard in Ja Morant, keeping this series competitive. At his current ownership on both sites, Spags, would you want to be over or underweight to the field? And any other interest in Grizzlies to round out this slate?
So I do like some other Grizzlies players a little bit more. Joe Val, we just talked about, I think is pretty appealing. Grayson Allen, a guy who I mentioned, who I used over the weekend in some lineups as a value play, just to try to get different from some of the other ones. Didn't quite work out as well as I would have liked there, but is a guy who is sort of finding his way to more run. I think a reliable body who can sort of get hot from shooting, also can add defense in some ways, and also would benefit, I think, if Dylan Brooks missed some minutes for whatever reason, whether it be foul trouble or whatever may come. I think there's a lot of ways here for Grayson Allen to get a few more minutes to be useful on a short slate as value, so he jumps out to me. But the question with John Morant, I think, is one that, to me, he looks too low owned on the DraftKings ownership. We had him for 25% the most recent run, at least that I pulled into my sheet here. And I think that looks like a number that I'd rather have more of. He's proven to be a really good matchup against Utah with his floater game, trying to sometimes hit some threes as best he can, but really just taking the usage, soaking up as much as possible. I think John Morant, to me, one of those plays that tonight on FanDuel, he's not overlooked, but on DraftKings, it does seem like he will be. So maybe you take a little bit less in the way of Philly parts and you get some more John Morant. I think that's an approach that actually has won tournaments recently, is just playing more of Utah Memphis because people aren't getting there enough. Could be the case on a short slate too. So I think just being willing to get, and maybe even forcing, it wouldn't be the worst, I think, worst idea, I think, to force in, one or two Memphis players if you're not getting enough of them, just to try to get there to get some exposure to this game a little bit heavier, because people just won't be there as much as they should.
Yeah, and I don't think Grayson Allen is like somebody who's going to project out phenomenally well today, but he's 3,600 and allows you to have lineup access to Joel Embiid and to Russell Westbrook, and being able to lock in those kind of raw points on a 2-game slate makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to get different, yeah, definitely getting more pieces of this Memphis team outside of just J-Val. Jaren Jackson Jr., he has, started to play a little bit better here of late. It's starting to trend up for him here, but those minutes kind of bounce around all over the place. I don't think it's going to be like the Golden State play-in game where all of a sudden he was playing 15 minutes and ends up sitting down the rest of the way through and they go Xavier Tillman towards the end. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is still somebody that can at 5,400 provide some kind of an upside. Don't want to be full fading him, but the main guy that I want a ton of on both sides today is John Morant. He's just been sublime in this series. Where has this guy been the entire regular season? That's kind of the frustrating part about it, is knowing that the potential for this was there. And I feel like he's somebody I've been overweight to in tournaments for months and months, never got paid off on it, but starting to get paid off on it here in the first round. Probably going to have to enjoy it while it lasts the next game or two, because he'll be done after that. But John Morant, definitely my one piece that I'm going to be way, way, way over top of the field on at 25% on DK.
All right. All of you viewers out there, give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live, so you never miss the craziness that ensues on the tip-off and everything else we have here at Awesemo. All right. That brings us to Awesemo Tells the Future. Looking back at all the first round series to this point, have your opinions changed on who could come out of the East or West? Also, how about any title takers you might have? Spags, we're going to start with you on this.
I think in terms of opinions changing, this isn't really one that changed for me, but the odds have changed now, are actually much less beneficial. But I think we talked on the future segment we had that I feel like the Bucks and Sixers were undervalued. And I think the Bucks in particular have proven to me that they are undervalued. The way they figured out Miami, and it's Miami who's been kind of playing down all year and figured it out towards the back half of the season. But, they didn't get as much out of Tyler Hero as they needed. Some of the guys that they traded for, Victor Oladipo not being in, it's not the best. Losing Olynyk, probably more important than they realized. But still overall for them, they were a team that was very competitive with the Bucks last year. And I think even in spite of that, the Bucks came out, proved to be, I think, a team of some sort of motivation for themselves, where they did not want to lose that one. They did not want to have any single loss on their record in that matchup. And I think that could be something that carries them through here. Playing on it with a chip on your shoulder, it's not something that's going to ever bear out in the data. But I think the Bucks are a team that the odds now are worse. I believe they were plus 750 just a few weeks ago. Now they're plus 550 to win the title. But in this spot, I think the Bucks, to me, still maybe a little bit undervalued. And I think a team that, for me, just would jump out, at least at first blush.
Why are the Sixers the third most favorited team to come out of the East? My brain cannot understand this. And I think that this is kind of the main question I'm posing to everybody out there on Spags and everybody else. But Brooklyn and Milwaukee have to play each other in the second round. That's the way that it's set up. I don't understand why Philadelphia isn't at least second in terms of the Eastern Conference, because they are going to sweep Washington. That's just what's going to happen tonight. And then going into the next series, they get the Hawks or Knicks, more than likely the Hawks at this point in time. They're going to demolish them as well. There's nobody sitting in their way until the Eastern Conference Finals. And then you have an opportunity to probably hedge out of that position, depending on Brooklyn and Milwaukee, who are going to have to be in an absolute slugfest. I mean, Milwaukee could not have looked any better. Brooklyn, we know the kind of potency they have as they start getting more games under the belt of Harden, Kyrie, and Durant playing together. They're going to be a juggernaut as well. That's looking like a 6 or a 7 game series. And whoever comes out of that might be dinged up. You could have some issues there. I find it shocking to me right now that the 76ers, you can get them at plus 280 around the industry. So head over to OddsShopper, take advantage of any kind of promotions that we have for different things for either risk-free bets or a number of things that we have for a path there. But the 76ers, that is a team that is just flooring me where they're at. I ended up taking a pretty large position on them yesterday. Felt really, really good about it because it just made sense to me. And it was right in the middle of that Nets game that I did it. Got right around plus 300. It's down a little bit to plus 280, but that's still a place where I want to be invested in that team heavily.
I think that's a good point too with the Sixers, where like just the point you made about them not having a tough matchup in the second round, where like Nets Bucks is going to be a heavyweight title fight. I think in terms of how the approach to that overall, but just the fact that it's like our pal Ben Ross talks about the contingencies in a bet, and when you're relying on things that require 2 things to happen instead of 1, like the Sixers functionally need 1 thing to happen because we're going to assume they really have no chance to lose in the second round and watch them lose in the second round somehow. But it just seems like there's really no chance for that to happen. Whereas Bucks Nets, like that's I think a series right now that Vegas would favor the Nets, but it's still one that's like, it feels like a 50-50 proposition based on what we see in the Bucks, based on what we know of the Bucks having one more level to hit to with Drew and Middleton and Giannis all working together and pushing, and maybe Brook Lopez having some outlier days, Bobby Portis having outlier days. Like it's just going to be tough though for that matchup. Whereas the Sixers do have that easy pathway to win, to get to the finals. So it's still going to be tough. I think the Sixers, and I think if anything, the Vegas odds sort of is saying that a little bit more, that Sixers are probably a notch behind both the Nets and the Bucks at this point. But I still think just the fact they can get to that spot and maybe take advantage too, like if they sweep their series or close it out in 5 games and then you have Nets Bucks go 7, that could take a lot out of a team. And the injuries too, these are 2 teams not strangers to injuries either. There's a lot of ways it could go bad for those teams, whereas the Sixers, certainly injuries too, but the fact they just might play less games could probably help them out.
All right, let's now head over to the West.
Yeah, so on the West side, I ended up this morning, I woke up and you get the news that Anthony Davis, as soon as that hit, I went in and instead of just betting the Suns, where you're basically looking closer to 50-50 in that terms as well, I feel like I did a smart kid thing. And I'm not sure if it's going to turn out to be a smart kid thing, but it felt like it. And so I'm going to pat myself on the back and pretend like it is. But I bet the Suns plus 850 to win the Western Conference. And then I'm going to basically have an opportunity to hedge out on game 6. If in the event that they don't win that game, if Anthony Davis is active there, you can basically take the Lakers side of it and you can kind of chisel into that plus 850. Because if you're putting $100 in there to win 850 for them to win the West, this next game, game 5, they're going to be playing in Phoenix. There's probably going to be no Anthony Davis is what it sounds like. You got to assume that number is going to change. And that number got taken off the board right away. But a lot of the books did not take off the plus 850 that sat there for the Suns. So I ended up capitalizing a little bit on that. I think I'm going to try to hedge a little bit in game 6, regardless of the outcome of this game. I think, the Suns are probably going to be definite favorites for me now when you take AD off the floor. But there's a path now for them where their next round, like I feel really good with them as the 2 seed, having a path that can actually work out pretty darn well for them at this point in time, depending on how the Clippers and Dallas work out. Plus 850 is just a nice number compared to plus 300. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole on the Lakers right now. Utah feels like that's an appropriate number for them. And the Clippers I'm already heavily invested in, so I don't have to worry about that. So take a position on Phoenix and kind of figure out what you want to do with game 6. But something tells me that Phoenix is probably going to be up 3-2 coming back to LA.
Yeah, Phoenix is one of those teams that we talked about as well that I felt like was undervalued because they just had to get past the Lakers. And I think for them, it would start to look a lot better, as well as the fact that they were a Western Conference leader all year long. And now we do have Chris Paul looking pretty close to healthy last game in a way that I think would give, if I were a Lakers fan or a Lakers better, I would have a little bit of concern combined with the AD injury. I think the Chris Paul just being functional right now is a huge part. And also, honestly, they probably have a little more confidence in campaign as well. If Chris Paul does have to come out of a game, like they know they can go to that guy and get pretty good production. So I think those are 2 big parts to keep in mind for the Suns. And I would agree, plus 850 for them looks good. The one that I'm looking at, though, would be the winner of the Nuggets Trailblazer series. I wouldn't mind just having both of those teams. And I think, to me, they are a little bit a little bit of a risk here because Denver, we know they're playing down a little bit of competition recently. You could kind of see it with the series with Portland. They just don't have the guys they had earlier in the year that would have probably been potential world beaters in this run to the finals. But this year, though, like this, whoever comes out of the series, I think they're going to be a little more battle tested. Another tough series here to start. Maybe it takes a lot out of them. And, two teams, especially with the Denver side, maybe it does take out of them more, just should have less bodies in the mix and then have to really lay it all on the line to potentially win a 7-game series. But they're both plus 2,000. And I feel like the Mavericks, I think we've kind of seen them get figured out. If you had that bet for game 1 and 2, like I'd advocated trying to cash out early would have been a good move. I think at this point, that series seems like it's gone away from them. So there's really no other long odds here you can go to that have some degree of reliability. I think with the Nuggets and the Blazers, you're getting the discount here because that series is kind of a coin flip. And if one of these guys makes it, I think they could get hot and get going and against teams that are either underperforming like the Clippers or hurt like the Suns, hurt like the Lakers. There's a pathway here for one of these teams to make it. So I think the Nuggets or Trailblazers to me would be the best Western bets on the board.
Okay. Now, as far as title takes, are we all in on Brooklyn? Who are we going with here?
I mean, Brooklyn's the favorite. I wouldn't bet them. I said that at the beginning of this, that I wouldn't be touching that number if they win the title. So be it. I'm probably not going to win too much money out of there, but I think that there's still going to be a path where if the 76ers, I'm taking them to win the East, there's going to be opportunities to be able to take advantage so long as they get through that Hawks series to make a profit. Like I'll be able to turn a profit in some way, shape, or form. That's something that our pal Greg Ehrenberg talks a lot about in terms of how you can basically turn a futures bet, be able to cash out. There's cash out options for different things now. I think that those can be heavily juiced, and I always warn people maybe not to get too trigger happy with that, but there's definitely profit to be had here, depending on how that Brooklyn-Milwaukee series turns out. I mean, that is a really tough series for the Nets. I think people don't understand how different Drew Holiday is from Eric Bledsoe. And it is a completely different Milwaukee Bucks team with him playing both sides of the ball as well as what he does. Eric Bledsoe is a decent defender. Drew Holiday is a top 5 perimeter defender at the point guard position in the NBA. It just is what it is. And so if you want to talk about Kyrie Harden, if there's somebody equipped to be able to handle both of those guys, it's going to be Drew Holiday. Dante DiVincenzo out, that definitely hurts them quite a bit, but they have enough serviceable pieces that can come in there, and Giannis is Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Nets are the deserving favorite here. I think we just saw them set a record, or they were on the cusp of setting an efficiency record in the playoffs with how they were playing against Boston over the weekend. So it's sort of hard to argue that until you see them get punched in the mouth and see how they respond. And I think the Bucks next series are going to be the team to kind of do that a little more. But to me, because they are the favorite here, you're just not getting enough of a discount for a team that, still has some injury concerns. Still, like, honestly, with how things are going with Kyrie, would it shock you if he missed a game or two and went on one of those little disappearing act things with him? Because that's sort of what happens here. And I think it might be justified given the fact that people are like throwing bottles at him and the Boston media is attacking him and he's stepping on logos and whatever. Like there's still ways here it can get weird for the Nets that I just don't think they're the one to take as a favorite. The Bucks, to me, I think would be the best bet at plus 550. They were a better bet a couple of weeks ago, as we talked about, at plus 750, but it's still here. I think a pretty good bet to take it down. I believe in what they're doing. I think what Eric said about these guys just getting stronger, I'm very much on the same page. Drew being a difference maker for them is a big one. And I also wouldn't hate taking the Suns at plus 2,000. If they get past the Lakers here, I think they're going to start to get healthier. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has figured something out in this run here where he's been great from a DFS perspective, but also like he's really affecting how the Lakers are attacking a lot of things inside and also ripping boards and playing big minutes. I think he'd be a game changer here against some teams with questionable center plays coming up potentially. So to me, I think the Suns plus 2,000, a team that's a little bit undervalued when they have been good all year. And now they might just be getting lucky with the draw this time.
Okay. Whoever's running Awesemo's account. Okay. I don't know who decided to just do this, but I just got trolled by Awesemo. This is like another level here. They're like, he's out here doing smart kid things in quotes. They already flipped it. They already have it put together. 1, props to you for that. 2, I hate you. 3, that was really fast. Like that was outrageously efficient. So well done. No, it wasn't Jordan Klein. So it might be the other Jordan, but either way, hello to them. And thank you for, making fun of me efficiently without even trying.
It's so easy. Everyone does it.
Really, I didn't know for 33 years of my life. I didn't really know. I always knew that I could be an easy target for stuff because I'm generally, a good sport about stuff. But oh my Lord, working at Awesemo.com has really exposed that flaw in my character where it's like, oh, yeah, no, you are something else, Eric. You're something else.
All right, really quickly, because Spags did bring it up. What is up with fans throwing things at players this year?
Insanity.
People don't know
What
how
does
to
that
act in
mean?
person, I think, is the thing, because they've been either not allowed to go out or they've been willingly taking themselves on the sidelines for a while. But I think it's just people getting back. They're getting too drunk. They don't know how to hold their liquor. And they're also like just, pent up energy. But I think it's a bad combination of one that I think it's better the NBA figures out sooner than later. Because, people are like, that guy got arrested and is getting charged with like felony battery or something, or aggravated. I forget what it was, but it's like a serious charge for him. And they have to prosecute these guys because people just don't know how to act right now.
Was that because Kyrie smeared his foot across the logo?
I think that's what the guy was claiming. What the response was
doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Especially for him. Like, if a player hits Kyrie, it's not the best either. But like, there's a sort of a precedent for that on the TO with the star at Dallas being one of those things that people remember historically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fan. Like, it's not your job. Like, you're there to watch. Like, you want to yell things. Like, and hopefully not the kinds of things that will also get you arrested or kicked out forever. But you yell things. You don't throw things at people.
Yeah, I go back and forth with my opinion of Kyrie Irving, but I think he described it perfectly, where fans feel entitled to certain behavior now. Like, I think that was his exact quote on it, was the fans feel entitled to act and do things a certain way, whether they're seeing clips on YouTube of people doing crazy stuff, or Instagram or Snapchat, or wherever they're going to get, these things that are trolls, whether it's a punked kind of thing from Ashton Kutcher back in the day up till now. It's like, dude, at a certain point, you got to be a human being, and you got to understand that these aren't like throwing a water bottle. Like, I don't know how full it was. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. Having any kind of an interaction with that isn't just, back and forth, understanding that you can say and talk and do whatever else you want there. But actions have consequences, and that's what should happen going forward.
It's unacceptable. Yeah.
Yep.
There's just no respect. People have to be put in their place. All right. Let's head over to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate for biggest bat. Which of these top 3 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Pete Alonso plus 225, Salvador Perez plus 333, and Cody Bellinger plus 350 Spags.
So on the show right before this one, I did this actually not knowing the odds, and now I guess maybe I'm the chalk donkey all along, but I did take Pete Alonso for this one, going against Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly giving up a 4.5% home run rate since 2019 to right-handed batters, 205 ISO as well. And Pete Alonso, one of those guys who I think has maybe gone a little bit unlucky this year, and I just expect him to be a little bit closer to the power numbers of yore that he's had than that. He is a guy who historically does have a 289 ISO against right-hand pitching. Also one of the better weather situations on the slate. They give the one for Kayla, so she can get a drink on the table here for the Spags MLB weather drinking game. But I think for me, it's Pete Alonso here. Hot weather, bad pitcher, best combination I think on the board.
Yeah, and then you got Chad Kuhl going up with a 494 weighted on base average over the season, 333, 0.62 or 6.42. It was something ridiculous. He's not a good pitcher, and there aren't very many bad pitchers on this 3-game slate to really be looking at for this evening, for this late night hammer of games at 5:10 and after. Just your main slate being a little bit smaller with games throughout the day, but I like attacking him on that side too with pretty much any of these Kansas City bats. I think that's probably a viable way to go. So I'll go the Sal Perez route, taking a little bit extra money there. But yeah, Pete Alonso is good chalk for a reason.
And now for biggest arm, which of these top 3 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? We've got Jacob deGrom, 8.5 strikeouts, Trevor Bauer, 7.5, and Jack Flaherty, 6.5, Eric.
So I'm kind of taking the under on Jack Flaherty here. I'm not sure necessarily. I mean, he's a phenomenal pitcher in a lot of respects, but he's had some sneaky overs of late. I think that was Aton that brought that up on the tip-off last week. I thought that was pretty fascinating, where there are some games, a number of his games have gone over this season, despite the fact that he has pitched very, very well, 2.84 ERA. So if we're just looking at that from a raw runs status, like he's been very effective at limiting runs. But this is a Dodgers team that is much, much better than what Jack Flaherty has faced throughout the entire season. Cincinnati, good starting, but Miami, Washington, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Colorado, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, and the White Sox. The White Sox were the first really good team that he faced since opening day up against Cincinnati, the first potent offense he's faced since then, and he just got torched. Got absolutely torched. 91 pitches. Only got to 91 pitches. Only went 3 2/3, 3 earned runs there. I think the Dodgers, now that they're getting Bellinger back, now that they're getting Turner back, I want to take the over of this game. I want to take the Dodgers run line. I want to be going everything anti-Jack Flaherty today.
Yeah, I think the Flaherty takes are reasonable, like even ignoring the competition part. And I guess actually maybe enhancing the competition part, like he's had a pretty easy schedule, but still only on the year, 24.5% K rate. That's down quite a bit from the 28.7% K rate it's had since 2019. And that means that really there's some issues here. And we talked about this on the deeper dive right before the show. So if you're watching both, sorry for repeating some things between the two, but the swing strike rate also down from the chase rate down a lot, down 4%. So there are some concerns for Flaherty where this line, we talk about it a lot on the show where a line sometimes doesn't reflect the situation. I think the Flaherty strikeout line to me kind of reflects past Flaherty and also doesn't reflect what Eric also mentioned there, that the Dodgers are getting healthier, getting Bellinger in, getting Turner in. Like these are really massive changes to a lineup that like some days recently, the best hitter has been Gavin Lux in the lineup. It's just a very different team right now to be going against and one that should be closer to the Dodgers that we expected coming into the year. So a lot of bad things for Flaherty. I agree. He's the best under on the board. The over though is still Jacob deGrom to me. It's not a great strikeout matchup going against Arizona, 24% K rate for them on the year, which is a little bit under the league average this year of 24.1%. But DeGrom's stuff is so good, and he also is really efficient in a way that Bauer isn't. DeGrom only 3.8 pitches per batter face compared to 4.3 for Bauer. Bauer's got to earn those strikeouts a little bit more than DeGrom does, and DeGrom already has the better K rate anyway. A 47% K rate, it's about 10% higher, actually a little bit more than that with compared to Bauer this year. So DeGrom's best pitcher on the board. You should be playing him for the DFS night slate. He's also the best strikeout bet on the board. Pretty much anytime he is on a strikeout prop bet, as long as it's not over 10, I feel like I would take the over every single time.
Okay. And for our next segment, is a water bottle a dangerous weapon? Yes or no? Just kidding. The chat is fired up about this.
It's heavy and it's got the cap too. It could spin in weird ways, pick up some momentum. There's like, you could like bust somebody open with a water bottle, like a full water bottle, especially.
Also, what are like your intent was to hit him with something. Like that's the other part of it.
That
it doesn't matter.
Point, yes.
Like the point, it's not a paper airplane either. Like we're talking about something that can physically carry weight and hurt somebody. Those aren't two different things. If you hit him with a paper airplane and it were to somehow randomly poke him in the eye, that's probably not going to cause any long-term damage. It's impossible. But if you chuck anything that can be like of substance, that's a definite no from, a couple rows back.
Agree. All right, heading back to the NBA for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for NBA key players. Guys, do we like the over under on them, and how many points would you assign? We've got Robin Lopez, 11.5 points plus rebounds. Eric.
So Robin Lopez, this is going to be an under for me. This center rotation has been difficult this entire year to peg down. We've talked about that routinely, like over and over again. But we're really not seeing him be the offensive guy that he was towards the end of the season as they've gone into these playoffs. 12, 10, and 15 minutes. It's not a lot of court time for a guy who doesn't have a lot of usage, has a decent enough hook shot, but that's still a big number to be getting to for him. It's gone back-to-back games without any rebounds. I mean, Philadelphia has been limiting this Washington team on the glass throughout. That's kind of, they've got size up front. You have Dwight Howard and Joel Embiid manning the center position. Rebounds are tough to come by against Philadelphia. And so that would be kind of the main way you would think Robin Lopez could possibly like trend up towards this number. But 11.5, that's big. I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I think the under seems reasonable here. Robin Lopez, this is something actually that ShipMyMoney, our pal Adam Scherer mentioned on one of the deeper dives recently. I think actually closer to the beginning of the series, maybe after game one. But Robin Lopez is a really bad post defender. He's a guy who historically has been a pretty good defender because he can switch and sort of stop some of the things that teams do in a modern way. But he's really been getting killed by Embiid every time on there. And you do see more Gafford minutes. You've seen Alex Len be more productive in his minutes. And I think really the main lesson that the Wizards seem to have learned from the series is that Lopez is just not the right matchup for Embiid. So I think the minutes to him trending down in a game, like he could certainly pick up more run here. And I think that because of that, I'd feel a little more comfortable coming under the 10-pointer on No House Advantage, maybe closer to a 7 or 8-pointer, I guess. But I think, really with Lopez, the only way he gets minutes today is if they're just in desperation mode and nothing else is working and they'll trot it out there. And at this point, it does seem like that's not going to work. So the under seems like a pretty good bet.
Next, we've got Grayson Allen, 7.5 point Spags.
So it looks like this is a decent over for Awesemo today, according to the projections on there, with over a 60% chance hitting, I guess 65% chance of hitting. And I'm also team Grayson Allen, as I mentioned earlier. I think he's one of very few, interesting value plays on the slate. I have him projected now, I guess, uncomfortably high. I have him for 9.5 points today. And there are certainly some ways those minutes maybe don't get there. But he's one of those guys that, as I mentioned earlier, like just finds his way to more minutes. And I think, especially when you're just not trying to kill yourself, Grayson Allen's a guy who maybe doesn't set the world on fire, but isn't going to kill you sometimes like a Jaren Jackson Jackson can, or some of the other guys in the rotation can. So in the spots, I think the over looks like a pretty good one. And I think to me, maybe closer to an 8-pointer than than some of the others, but I think a 6, 7, 8-pointer somewhere in that range seems about right for no house advantage.
I think, yeah. So we do like the over on this one. This might be something where if I'm going to take the over on a couple of these other points in this entire game and just kind of hope it shoots out, I think I've been stacking a little bit more for my NHA lineups, just in terms of what the game, like the expected game flow would be. And, scoring the basketball is an independent event. It's not helped by anybody. It directly goes against other players on the same team. But in terms of game flow, you can basically put all of these overs together, whether it's Grayson Allen, John Morant. I probably wouldn't want to play like Grayson Allen and somebody else if you had a Desmond Bane or somebody like that listed, but they're not here on NHA. I like taking the over of 7.5 here. I probably want to pair it with other overs. We both talked about how we like this Utah-Memphis game a little bit more than what the public probably will, that there's certain players like, for me, John Morant, for you, J-Val as well, that we want to be over on. But I do like going the direction of the over here and probably pairing him with other overs from the same game.
All right, we've got 5 minutes left, so we're going to pick up the pace a bit. Last one, Jonas Valanciunas, 12.5 rebounds. Eric.
Yeah, so that's going to be an over, which is just a crazy, crazy thing to look at, that's that large of a number. But it's actually one of the best overs that we have on the board. Earlier in the day, it was the best over. It was sitting around 14.5. That's come down a little bit slightly. I think that, people are like, we're tweaking the projections throughout the day to kind of account for the data that we're mining. The guys behind the scenes do an unbelievable job of kind of making the projections what they are. Ownership is so hard to kind of peg on some of these 2-game slates because it really just depends on where people want to make their stands and whether there's recency bias attached to certain plays, or if there's guys like Mike Conley who are super underpriced. But I think J-Val, for DFS purposes, there's a massive upside. He's going to be on the court every single time alongside Rudy Gobert. Those two are going to be matched up against each other. Obviously a tough spot, but J-Val, a massive rebounding rate. I like getting the over on 12.5 here.
Yeah, I would agree here. I have him projected for 14.2 rebounds today, so that would be pretty safe on the over there. And I guess the one way you could see maybe playing the other way would be if you are playing a lot of Jonas Valanciunas on your other sites, then maybe you have one lineup on no house advantage to try to hedge a little bit. So we talk about sometimes on there, that's one way to try to differentiate your exposure rather than just going down entirely with the ship if a guy does have an off day. But overall, it just looks like one of the stronger plays as well for me as an over. So I feel like this is a 9 or 8-pointer. And unless, maybe in some lineups, I think this is one spot to maybe get contrarian because people will be cramming in J-Val everywhere. That's sort of the mindset of players for the most part across all these sites they're playing on. And I think that's one way you can get different. So I put in one lineup of an under on that one, or maybe just take it out of the lineup. But I think generally this is going to be one of the better plays on the board.
All right. And don't forget to play No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports. Just download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Right into good dog, bad dog. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog, and betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who's a good one to target tonight and who's a bad one? Eric, give us both your good dog and bad dog.
All right. So let's on the good dog side of things, let's stick in the NBA. I think the good dog, we could say Memphis at 5.5 playing at home here. This entire series has been more competitive than I expected. But if I think Mike Conley is going to get a little bit reduced and Donovan Mitchell and these guys, I kind of want to just be siding on Memphis going out, playing a solid all-around game. 5.5 is a nice number to be getting for them at home. I'm happy to be going that direction. And then you guys know my bad dog by now. I'm shorting the Washington Wizards. That number is just it should be double digits here at this point in time from what we've seen. Washington has no answer for any of these pieces. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, they are just going to run amok today.
Yeah, I have the exact same choices for good dog and bad dog. I think Memphis can win this one outright. I don't mind a money line bet on them. I do think it's very difficult for Washington to win today. And, I mentioned the reasons earlier, just why do they want to go back to Philly just to lose a series anyway? That seems the main logic there. I do think if you end up leaning a little more towards Washington, you're going to be alone on that take for the most part. We saw in the chat, Eric and I have talked about it throughout the show. Nobody thinks that Washington can win. So if you want to take that for contrarian approach, that seems fine. But since we had the same picks for my extra bad dog as well, I'll go to Arizona. I think that they get completely killed today by DeGrom. And I also think that Pete Alonso has a nice home run day. I think the Mets overall have good power potential in that game. So I think that's one that the Mets win outright and cover. And I think just don't play Arizona at home.
Noted. Prepare yourselves, people. The pirate parlay of the day is here. Shiver me timbers and a bottle of rum. The time for a parlay has surely begun. Armed with a hat and a parrot named Parody. What are your picks, Eric? Choose your words carefully.
I shall, me dear. I shall. I have a couple jokes for y'all first. I'm very excited to start the pirate parlay up here again. Christopher Spags, why are pirates called pirates?
I don't know, Mr.
They just are, okay?
Also,
Kayla, what is a pirate's favorite fast food restaurant?
Arby's?
Arby's. Well done. You don't look like a Kayla, but that's fine. Kayla,
sorry.
what is a pirate's favorite letter?
R.
You'd think it was the R, but it's actually the C.
Oh
My pirate parlay of the day. We are going to piece together NHL take. We got a game 7. The Habs and the Maple Leafs playing each other minus 200. Maple Leafs money line. Carey Price, the luck runs out tonight. 76ers money line minus 375. Dodgers minus 1.5. Plus 115. There's no hook there for you to get caught by. Plus 309, the combination of the 3. That is what I am here for, mateys. Best of luck to y'all.
I gotta say, a few of those sounded more like a leprechaun than a pirate. I'm just gonna put that out there. And I'm also confused by the character motivation. Are you Eric as a pirate, or are you a separate being as a pirate?
I'm Jeffrey Rush. It's Jeffrey Rush's voice from Pirates of the Caribbean. You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. Thank you, me mateys. We don't have the rights to that song, so we should stop singing it now.
It's a pirate's
My
life
bad.
for me, etc.
Love Hans Zimmer. Wow, Eric, we're going to do that every day. That was really great.
Thank you. Did you see my parody?
We caught that.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
I'm shocked Spags never mentioned anything because your parrot, no one addressed the parrot in Eric's room, but
I mean, I like him. He's staring a hole in my soul right now, based on what I'm seeing on our Zoom link. But I liked, again, I said, if you're going to do the pirate bit, I need to see a parrot. And I appreciate the fact that Eric took that advice to heart and brought us a Parody the Parrot. Is that his name? Am I correct in that?
Parody
Yes.
the Parrot. He likes competitive games, competitive outings. I don't know. I thought Parody, Parody, I can change his name around to fit what I need him to. So yeah, Parody the Parrot. He's ready to rock. Pirate parlay of the day. Let's go.
love it. Eric, that's a great look for you, by the way. All right.
Probably not. But
Okay, really quickly, we're over time. Spags, give me your make or break and fade of the day very quickly.
My make or break for the day will probably be Russell Westbrook. I think just getting over there seems like a move I'll have, though. Again, I haven't sorted yet, so that's going to be something I just let the numbers do the work is what I like to do. Fade of the day for me, I think will be I think it's just going to be Mike Conley overall. Like, and not a fade because on a 2-game slate, you're going to get some of these guys, but getting less Mike Conley in the field, I think is just one move I'd like to make for the reasons we talked about earlier.
Eric,
oh
your
yeah, no,
turn.
play all the Russell Westbrook. Okay, I can do that. What? Oh, okay, yeah, and play a bunch of Memphis John Morant. Okay, cool, awesome. And we are going to short Dylan Brooks. We're going to be short on Dylan Brooks today. That's what Parody said.
There we go. Listen to Parody and listen to these guys. They know what they're talking about. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Tip-Off. Hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are coming your way next on the same stream, so stay tuned. I'm Kayla Knierim. Thanks to Spags. Thanks to Eric. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the Tip-Off.
I'll do one better. In this series, right? He has 7 rebounds and 11 personals.
He has as many personals as points in the last 2 games. And he doesn't play defense. So who's he fouling?
Right. Total liability at this point.
I randomly remembered earlier.
Yeah.
Remember last year when you would be like $6,500 chalk and hit like 9 3-pointers a game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I randomly remembered that. It pissed me off even more because I didn't have him those days.
Well, remember one of those games was against the Sixers where he had like 8 threes and a half.
Yeah, vaguely remember that.
Oh, I remember it distinctly because he shit on us.
I can't even pull up his Draftkings page. I just want to like punch my computer screen.
It was all right. It was 25 points, 7 for 13 or 3, but he hit 6 of them in the first half. Granted, he had 1 rebound in that game. Gotta love it. You playing him today?
Maybe.
You're good, Jordan. Whenever you want, man.
He's so cheap.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com Deeper Dive presented by OddsShopper. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters, LOUGHY_D. Joined for this 2-game slate by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Still seething over this Davis Bertans press conference from the other night. Now you got to watch him again today. Very likely going to get swept out of DC. Not looking good, man.
Yeah, pretty much counting on having 30 more minutes of Davis Bertans this season and then getting a break. So looking forward to that.
Did you see my tweet about Mark Zumoff, the play-by-play guy, what he said?
No.
Coming back from commercial?
No.
Okay, so I mentioned it to Josh today. But they're coming back for commercial, and you know how they'll be like, oh, the new Honda Fit, check it out in stores nearby. And then it'll be like, Xfinity, your home provider for, like they'll do those little ads coming back from commercial.
Yeah.
And then they have the aerial view outside of the stadium.
Yeah.
Oh, so Mark Zumoff goes, oh, the Pentagon. At least there's some defense in Washington. Like, it was so good, man. It was so good. But yeah, I figured you'd appreciate that. I was just straight like gunning for them. And then Ala Abdelnaby, who's the color commentator, just starts dying. Like, couldn't hold back. So yeah, it was pretty good. It's not wrong though.
It's not wrong. They are terrible.
And we've got the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Wizards again tonight. So accompanying them is the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies. We're going to walk through all of this, and we're happy to have you with us. So first things first, hit that thumbs up. I know I'm annoying. I get it, but it helps us a ton. And if you're coming here, checking out the content every day, it's the simplest, freest way to help support us. So what are we at? 109. Let's bump that up to 150 here as we get started. Still not the greatest ratio with about 600 people watching, but every single one counts. And hit that subscribe too. If you haven't subscribed yet, help us get to 50. Well, let's say 60,000. I'll play it cool today. And if you hate it, just unsubscribe. Hit that notification bell as well. And if you want to join as a member here on the YouTubes, hit that join now. Check it out. Get the perks that come along with us and with it. And we're here for it. Of course, prioritize the questions as well if you have any throughout our shows. But Adam, first question to you. With a 2-game slate, we've had a bunch of 3-gamers recently. Any initial thoughts, good value, stars and scrubs, potential, balanced slate today? What are we looking at?
Very different pricing between DraftKings and Fanduel. For most of the postseason, I felt like the pricing has been pretty tight. I still think it's pretty tight today on Fanduel, at least in most spots. DraftKings, though, a lot of guys really underpriced. So I still think it sets up as a pretty balanced slate, since the only real guy to pay up for is Westbrook, kind of Embiid, but really it's Westbrook. And he's, I think, more of a luxury than a necessity given the quality of the value and his own matchup and all that. So I think it naturally ends up being a pretty balanced slate, but I do think that the mid-range on DraftKings is just more underpriced than it is on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think so as well, and we'll get into all of that. The Memphis Grizzlies also hosting the Utah Jazz. Did you catch the Grizzlies Jazz game the other night?
Kind of.
Like the Grizzlies are actually pretty impressive given their personnel. I mean, that's a scrappy team right there with Brooks and Jackson and John Morant and Joe Val. Like, they're not winning this series, but they've given Utah all they can handle through the first 3 games.
Yeah, they are. They're a team that I mentioned it on Twitter, I think, talking about Dylan Brooks, but he was one of the only guys this year that actually like took the Bradley Beal matchup and actually slowed down Bradley Beal. Like, after one of the games, I think Beal's just, kind of, said he did a really good job. Like I couldn't score. So yeah, I mean, Brooks, I think for, all the crap he gets as an offensive player, he is a very good defensive player. And yeah, it's a team that's, pretty fun. You have Jackson, you have Morant, who's obviously really fun to watch.
Yeah, this team just has some ridiculous foul trouble, and it's not just Jaren Jackson. It's Dylan Brooks. I mean, it gets out of control. Hopefully we can limit that today, but let's dive into it first with the Philadelphia 76ers going up against the Washington Wizards, up 3-0 in the series. You really, at this point, they're 8.5-point favorites, by the way, 230 total. You can't look at Embiid's actual per game totals. You have to look at the fact that they've blown him out in back-to-back games. He's seen very limited playing time. And last game, despite not having a huge performance, like on a per minute basis, Joel Embiid was electric. He had 36 points, a career high in the playoffs, 28 minutes, 14 for 18 shooting. He's now 3 for 4 from beyond the arc in back-to-back games. And he's not even getting to the line that much. You know why? Because he's just making everything. And they're not like, can I just tell you, Adam, I get a little hyped up about this because it almost, even as a Sixers fan, makes me mad for you as a Wizards fan. Like the Sixers aren't getting to the line, and people might say, well, what are they doing wrong? It's the Wizards are doing nothing to even try to stop them from scoring.
Yeah. Embiid has fewer. Oh no, sorry. I was looking at the wrong column. Embiid has 2 more free throws in the last 2 games than Davis Bertans has personal fouls.
God.
Which is not a lot. Well, I mean, it's a lot of personal fouls. It's not a lot of free throws.
It's bad, but Embiid averaged or produced over 2 fantasy points per minute in that game. Like he was very good. It's
1.6 for the series.
Yeah, right. It's just, can the Wizards keep this close? I tend to think that they lose this game, but maybe, that last dying gasp of air gets them competitive enough to where we go into the fourth quarter and it's not a 20-point game. We need that today with some of these players.
Yeah, I kind of think we're going to know really quickly out of the gate how this game goes. Like
that's a good point.
If they have energy and they're, obviously it doesn't help for DFS at that point, but if they come out with energy and, you saw them down the stretch of the regular season, Westbrook really, lit a fire under this team and they were playing hard defensively. They were actually defending pretty well. If you see that kind of energy here, I think you get a game. It wouldn't shock me if you just see them come out just flat and it's done early, but not a whole lot you can really do, especially with it being a 2-game slate. There's certainly blowout risk here, but it's only an 8-point spread. The other game's like a 5-point spread. What are you going to do? Just not play the Sixers?
Right. Exactly. Forgot to mention it earlier. Happy Memorial Day. Important day around this country. Talk to Josh. Like, I don't know why we say Happy Memorial Day or why we celebrate it with hot dogs and hamburgers, but that's just what we do,
Yeah. Yeah. And beer.
And beer, yeah. I did all of that yesterday, though. But yeah, a somber day, really. And thoughts with the families of all of those who have lost, those who have served our country. All right, so let's dive into it with Joel Embiid first. First spot to go to. He's come down to $9,500 on DraftKings and 10-2 on Fanduel. He really has. Even if they double him, it hasn't made a difference recently. And if that's the case, Tobias Harris can put up big numbers as well. There's just so many ways that this team can score. They have the highest effective field goal percentage of any team in the postseason. So we got to just really lock this one down from top to bottom. Tell me where you're going with Joel Embiid first at this price point that's come down pretty significantly.
Yeah, I mean, he looks great. 10-2 on FanDuel's fine. 9,500 on DraftKings obviously looks really good as well. The only concern for him really is, the blowout risk, but that's something that you're dealing with this entire game and kind of with the slate in general. So not really a big concern. His usage percentage in the series and his rebounding percentage are both down below his season averages, but he's still averaging 1.61 DraftKings points per minute. He's still, got like a 32.5% usage rate. I'm not really concerned about any of that, especially because you're talking about basically like a 2-game sample size when you consider that he missed, a lot of the first half of the first game with foul trouble. He sat like the last 2 fourth quarters. So you're not even talking about 3 full games here. I'm just perfectly comfortable going back to Embiid. And then you still have good pricing, especially on DraftKings on Simmons and Harris. They're both reasonable plays on FanDuel as well, but really stand out on DraftKings. One thing I want to point out with Harris, and again, it's just kind of something to keep in mind. I don't think it should really sway your opinion on him one way or the other. Don't get too caught up in what he's done in this series. He has like a 30% usage rate through the first 3 games, but so much of that is because of the first half of the first game when Embiid was in foul trouble. 19 of the 29 field goal attempts he took in game 1 came with Embiid on the bench. So I think, in the games that Harris played with Embiid and Simmons during the regular season, he had about a 21% usage rate. In the 2 games Embiid hasn't been in foul trouble, he's around 24, 25%. I expect you see that around 24% usage rate going forward as opposed to 30, but it's still a very good matchup. He's still cheap. He averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute when these guys were healthy during the regular season. If he plays 36 or 37 minutes today, as you would expect in a competitive game, even if he just averages that 1.05 fantasy points per minute, he's going to be fine for his salary. He should still do better than that in this matchup. So I still think he looks good. His rebounding numbers have been up in this series. So have Ben Simmons, which I think is important to note, especially with Washington being a poor rebounding team. So all 3 of those guys look great. And then you get into value with Danny Green and Seth Curry. I think Curry is probably my favorite value play on the slate. 4,300 on DraftKings, only 3,700 on FanDuel. He should play 30 to 32 minutes if this game's competitive. He's one of the most efficient shooters in the league. He's going to get good looks in this matchup. So it's not really difficult at all for him to pay that off. And then Danny Green, I don't like him quite as much as Curry, but similar as far as just should get plenty of open looks against the Wizards.
Let's talk a little bit more about Ben Simmons here. You dove pretty deep into Tobias Harris, and good points there as well, especially given that if Embiid plays the amount of minutes you'd expect him to play, you're expecting a drop off in some production. Although none of these prices are all that absurd. Ben Simmons, when he wants to turn it on, he can. It's really that simple. When he decides that he wants to turn it on, he can. He's shooting 72% over the last 2 games. He's 18 for 25. Like, what he can do, flirting with triple doubles every single night. What Ben Simmons can we expect? Like, I honestly, there's a rhetorical question because I know the answer to this, but it makes for a better flow of the show. What type of Ben Simmons should we be expecting in this matchup and again tonight in game 4?
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a very productive Simmons here because I think that while the scoring may come or go with him, we have seen him be more aggressive in this series than earlier or for a lot of the season. He's got at least 9 field goal attempts in all 3 games, 10 and 15 in the other 2, and he's got a usage rate of about 22% in the 2 games Embiid wasn't in foul trouble. So all that's good to see. But the thing that makes me really like Simmons is that the Wizards are really inefficient defensively, so he's likely to convert a higher percentage of potential assists into actual fantasy points. They don't rebound well, so you can continue to see solid rebounding numbers from him as well. It just makes me pretty confident going to Simmons, especially, DraftKings where he's 7,900. You get the double-double and triple-double bonus. I just think he looks great there.
Daniel Gafford's starting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is great, but then it's not when Scott Brooks decides that Len will play 30 minutes off the bench.
Well, and it's not great when he picks up 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes against Embiid, and then, yeah.
It's not, but if I'm being, we'll wait to get there because we'll dive into that a lot. That's actually a huge development for a 2-game playoff slate for sure. So we'll see what happens there.
Now I really hope he plays great. The Wizards win just so I can hate Scott Brooks even more.
Yeah. Like just get 1 game and it'll be because of Gafford.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you. Seth Curry is at a price point where I would assume you probably get you get 32 minutes from him if it's close. They got the 7-point win in game 1. Is he going to be a high volume shooter? No, but most of them are going to be, high quality shots. They're going to be 3-point attempts. And in the event, I mean, he's also a very, very good shooter. He's a 47.3 3-point shooter. He's been lighting it up in this series, as has everyone else from the 76ers. Where do we turn to somebody like Seth Curry when you're looking at a value price point against the worst defense in the playoffs?
Yeah, I love Curry here. Like I said, I think he's the best or one of the best point per dollar plays on the slate. Really cheap on both sites. And, he played 27 minutes in 3 quarters last game, despite being questionable or probable coming into the game, hadn't practiced the day before. It's just, I think, too cheap of a price point when you're going to get 30 plus minutes if the game's competitive. And it's just, not to say he can't fail there, but this is someone that averages about 0.8 fantasy points per minute. It's really tough not to pay off $4,300 or $3,700 depending on the site, especially when you just consider, again, he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league in terms of efficiency, and the Wizards aren't exactly likely to be putting guys in his face when he's taking them. So it's just, I think, a really good spot for Curry, a really good price tag.
Is there any value that we can it's tough because this 76ers team, again, that's why I'm saying you can't just look at game logs here. It'll get you in a lot of trouble. But is there any value that we can kind of unearth at the bottom? Guys like George Hill, Dwight Howard probably only plays like 12 minutes if this game stays close. Even in blowouts, he's not getting all of the blowout run. Matisse Thybulle has been a defensive mastermind, absolute stellar player defensively, but on offense, you're hoping for, well, you're not going to get anything. And then Tyrese Maxey's been getting a little bit of run, these type of guys. Is there anybody value-wise that we can get to off the bench?
So, I mean, I think there's three things to mention, and the level of interest you should have in them, I guess, kind of depends on how big the tournament you're playing is, because the only reason any of these guys are really getting mentioned is it's a 2-game slate. But you have George Hill, who is going to play like 18 to 20 minutes. You know that. He's not going to do a ton when he's out there. But for a 2-game slate at 3,200, there's at least, some argument to be made for as long as you're getting, really good players elsewhere in your lineup. You kind of count on those minutes from George Hill. Dwight Howard is semi-interesting in tournaments just because he is only 4K, and we know that he can put up a monster game in a hurry. Like if you're getting 16 to 18 minutes, which isn't what you should expect. But if this game were to blow out or Embiid were to be in some foul trouble, you can get those extra minutes. If you get 16 to 18 minutes from Howard, he's likely to be pretty good. Obviously, don't play him with Embiid. Obviously, don't have your night count on him because there's a very good chance, like if this game's close, he plays 13 minutes or so. And then the third guy that I would mention and the riskiest of the group would be Tyrese Maxey, who he actually played in the first half ahead of Shake Milton last game. If this game's competitive, I don't expect him to play more than like 10 minutes or something like that. But if this game were to blow out, potentially you get like 6 first half minutes from Maxey, and then he plays like the whole fourth quarter or something, and you're getting 18 to 20 minutes. So again, it's just, if you're going to go that route, it should be in larger field tournaments. You also probably are going to want to pay attention to who else is in those lineups. Like you probably don't want to pay $9,500 for Joel Embiid if you're counting on Tyrese Maxey playing the whole fourth quarter of a blowout, because it probably means Embiid's not playing his full minutes. So I think it's something, to pay attention to, like who you're pairing him with. But those are the 3 cheap guys off the bench that I could at least see like some path to them having success.
For sure. Our boy Eitan Shander says, Laffy, you laying the first half points or what? I'll be honest with you, Adam. I'm not comfortable in the first half points because kind of what you said just a minute ago, we're going to know how this game turns in the first. We're going to know what this game is going to look like in the first few minutes, in my opinion, of it. I actually don't mind monitoring it, hitting the live line on something. I'd rather do that to get an idea, because in a game like this where elimination game, could Washington come out early and actually put up some points? Bradley Beal gets hot. Daniel Gafford, you've got to change in the starting lineup. I think all of that is very possible here. I still think the Sixers get the win. I think this is a great game to bet live, as you were just pointing out. You didn't mention that specifically, but you could see what direction this game takes pretty early on.
Yeah, and I do think, again, this is kind of just making up narratives to some extent, but like Gafford starting, I think does make it a little bit more likely that you actually get a decent start out of the gate for the Wizards, just because of the energy he brings. Like he goes out there, gets a couple big blocks or, a couple of dunks, and it just, kind of gets the crowd going. So, again, very narrative based, but I think it makes it so it's a little bit more likely that this game is close out of the gate.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But hey, listen, if you are looking to take some shots, if you are looking at this game, whether it's player props, whether it's first half lines, whether it's full game, whatever it is, OddsShopper.com, totally free. Got lines from all of the different books. Shop around, because as we all know, sustainable winning and betting comes when you shop odds and you find the ways to get the best odds, the best bets, no matter where you are, assuming that sports betting is legal. So if you go to OddsShopper.com, you can sort player props by player, you search their name. That's my favorite feature of all of this. But you have the bet tracker, the notifications, all of that great stuff. And of course, all of the odds from every book that's available to you lined up so you can pull it right there. You don't have to go from one to the other, or you don't have to go to some of these other sites that just the UI is absolutely hideous. So from basketball to baseball to MMA, NHL, whatever you want, totally free, and take advantage of some of the opportunities on here to sign up. If it's a new book and you're looking to get action down there, you're looking to spread it out a little bit. They're trying so hard to acquire new customers. Sports betting's booming right now. It's only going to get bigger as more states begin to legalize it. Take advantage of some of these offers. They're throwing money at people, trying to get them to sign up. So there's literally no better time to do it than right now. Go to OddsShopper.com. Everything on the platform entirely free. It's a great companion piece to have as a sports bettor and as a DFS player for research purposes as well. All right, so let's flip to the other side of this one, the Washington Wizards. Before we get to Westbrook and Beal, let's kick it off with the news. Daniel Gafford getting the start. You and I have been adamant all season long, especially you as a Wizards fan, a disgruntled one at that, that Daniel Gafford is someone that deserves more minutes. And you know what the worst part is, man? Scott Brooks said it himself. Remember they asked him?
Yeah. Because he started a couple second halves, and Brooks has said, "Yeah, I think he should play more." I will give Brooks the benefit of the doubt because Gafford confirmed it too recently, a couple games ago. Gafford hasn't been in shape to play more minutes. Gafford's been asking out of games, so that
taken after Burton's.
Yeah, exactly. So that's at least something. Brooks maybe was shying away from starting him for that reason, but yeah, glad to finally see him in the starting lineup.
Why is he not in shape to play more games? It's not like he's only been in the rotation for 5 days.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had that injury, but you'd think he'd be over that by now.
Yeah, but when did he come back? Like months ago, right?
Feels like a month ago, probably.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Danny. Get it together, man. They're trying to give you more minutes there. What are you doing with them, though, getting the start? I mean, the obvious concern is foul trouble against Embiid, but Embiid just mows through centers anyway and puts them all in foul trouble by halftime.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the concern. I just real quickly tried to go back through Popcorn Machine and eyeball how many minutes Gafford's played with Embiid on the floor this series. By my count, he's played 19 or 20 minutes. He's picked up 4 fouls in those minutes, which actually isn't a bad rate at all.
Kind of par for the course. He doesn't have that high of a foul rate this season, 3.9 per 36. It's not good, but it's way better than seasons past.
Yeah, I mean, overall in these, he's played a total of 62 minutes in this series. He's only picked up 9 fouls. So there's foul risk, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, how many minutes he physically can play, because we've seen him playing 20 to 22 minutes. Him starting, maybe he plays 24 or 25. I'm not going to give the guy like 30 minutes or something like that, though. But it does make me like Gafford a little bit more. I thought Gafford was a pretty decent play anyway, because I was counting on 20 to 22 minutes at 4,300 on DraftKings, 5,400 at Power Forward on Fanduel. We know, he's averaged about 1.2 fantasy points per minute. So he was going to give you good production anyway, I think. Now I think the ceiling is a little bit higher because there is a path to him playing more minutes. But I think the floor, I don't even know if I'd say the floor is lower. I think that he's just a little bit riskier because you do have to deal with more minutes against Embiid. So the foul trouble, poses a risk, and then also just a really good defender in Embiid. But overall, I think it's probably a slight net positive for Gafford.
Would you consider him a essential option tonight?
Essential might be a little bit strong. I haven't made lineups yet, but I do know that he was showing up in a decent amount of my early lineups I made before the show, at least on DraftKings. So given that, now is with him projected for 21 minutes. If I bump that to like 23 or 24, I'm probably going to end up just plugging him in and taking a chance. Because the thing that I like about him on this slate, and I mentioned in the deep dive today, there's a decent number of options around his price point, but most of them are guys where you're saying, well, I think they're going to play a lot of minutes, but they're probably not going to do a whole lot. Like Seth Curry, kind of the exception, but even he's, 0.8 fantasy points per minute. Davis Bertans, Danny Green, like guys like that. They're going to probably play more minutes than Gafford, but I'll take my chances on the guy that averages well over a fantasy point per minute, as opposed to watching Davis Bertans run around the court and do nothing.
For sure. And to your point, just under 33%, just under a third of his minutes have come with Embiid on the floor this series. So I would anticipate, obviously, to see that come up a lot. As far as minutes, though, I'm not willing to project him for like a massive jump in minutes tonight.
Yeah, I'm giving him a couple more minutes.
24 is what I think is.
That feels about right to me.
Yeah, seems good to me. But 24 from Gafford is, what's he, a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy? Without me looking at it. Yeah. So that's not bad at all.
Yeah. I mean, in both play-in games and all 3 games of this series, he's played between 20 and 22 minutes. I think it would be pretty ambitious to say, oh, now I think he plays 28. I guess there's a greater than 0% chance that happens, but I think it would be it's pretty ambitious between 1, not knowing what the rotation is really going to look like, 2, not knowing, how his conditioning is, 3, the risk of foul trouble. 24 seems like a pretty good spot to come in.
Yep, for sure. And while you and I talk all the time, we'll move on after this, but it's an important spot today and we got plenty of time. We discuss all the time, like how moving into the starting lineup, a lot of times people look at it as a quality thing, but oftentimes it isn't, just because of the usage that you're seeding to other top players. With a center that already isn't a high usage, high shot volume guy, outside of Embiid, I always love when centers come into the starting lineup. I'm not worried about, decreased usage. The rebounding opportunities are still going to be there. Shot blocking, like all of the things that Daniel Gafford can do to create fantasy points. You don't have to worry about the fact that he might not have a high usage rate coming off the bench coming from the bench to the starting lineup.
Yeah, and he's played 339 minutes with Westbrook on the floor this season. He has a 19.7% usage rate, 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. He fits really well with Westbrook because he'll run the floor with him, and Westbrook will feed him lobs at the rim. So
for sure,
I think it's actually good.
But like even with Westbrook, you get 40 plus minutes from the guy anyway, and his first and third quarter rotation are short enough to where he's playing a lot of those minutes with Gafford anyway, you would assume. Like even if
152 minutes with both of Beal and Westbrook on the floor, still a 19% usage rate and 1.22 DraftKings points per minute.
So yeah, nothing to worry about. How many minutes did you say he's played with Westbrook?
339 or 399, I don't remember.
Really? So that's like I feel like that's most of his minutes, maybe not. No, that's probably like a little less than half. What are our thoughts on Westbrook today? Going to an expensive option, obviously a triple-double threat. His first triple-double of the series last time out. He's 11 flat on DraftKings and Fanduel.
72% of his minutes have been with Westbrook.
72%? Okay.
Yeah. As far as Westbrook goes, I think he's obviously fine in tournaments if you can get there. He gives you a really high ceiling. He's the highest projected guy on the slate. But I do think there are, serious concerns. One being that he's really expensive. Two being that the Sixers are just a very good team defensively. They're capable of shutting him down and keeping him away from the rim. He only has about a 25.5% usage rate in this series, which could be a result of the Sixers. It could be a result of him playing injured. It could be both. But either way, you're seeing his usage about 4 points lower than you were seeing during the regular season. His rebounding percentage in this series is only about 12.5% compared to 16+% since the All-Star break. You had mentioned at the beginning of the series, I think, about the Sixers being a good rebounding team that could, take some of those rebounds away from Westbrook. We're seeing that happen. So, I still think Westbrook, he last game, was questionable to play, played 34 minutes, posted a triple-double, had his best game of the series. He still gives you a massive ceiling, but this is another slate where I just don't think I think Westbrook is more of a luxury. He's someone that you can go to in tournaments and hope that, some scrub that you're fitting in your lineup has a big game and then, Westbrook goes for 65. But this isn't, the end of the regular season where it was like put Westbrook in and figure out the rest.
Right. Yeah, good thinking there. Now, with Beal, he's been, from an efficiency standpoint, he's been fine. Like his volume is massive. I don't even know at this rate why he even attempts threes. I think the only reason you're seeing this many 3-point attempts is because they can't stop Philly, and the only way they can try and get back into it is with that, but it's making it worse. Dude, he's 1 for 6, 1 for 6, and 1 for 8 from 3 in these 3 games. Just absolutely dreadful 3-point shooting from Beal. And that's really the one element of his game that struggles. He's a phenomenal scorer. He's smooth as butter. He can do everything well except knock down threes when they need to get some quick scoring.
Yeah, it was just funny because when he first came into the league, he was a 3-point shooter that couldn't get to the rim.
And now he needs to take lessons from Nick Vucevic and Brook Lopez, who has combined for like 1-3 over the first 10 seasons.
Yeah, and he's still 35% this season from 3, but definitely.
But just for like such a good shooter and scorer, you would think that it would be a better mark.
Yeah, you think it would be higher. But yeah, he's got about a 34% usage rate in the series, actually a little over 34%. He, for the season and games he played with Westbrook, was just shy of 34%. So you're still seeing him get up a bunch of shots. You're seeing, Philly struggle a bit to contain him because, like we've talked about before, it's just as long as you can contain one of Westbrook or Beal, the Wizards aren't going to beat you because Bertans is terrible, Rui's terrible, everyone on this team is terrible except for Westbrook and Beal. So as long as you can contain one of them, and Westbrook is obviously the easier one to contain, there's just no real reason to prioritize shutting down Beal because it's just so much harder to do. So you're seeing him get up a ton of shots, 23, 28, and 26 field goal attempts in the first 3 games of this series. Not doing a ton in terms of peripherals outside of the 10 rebounds in game 1, but still averaging about 1.3 DraftKings or 1.25 DraftKings points per minute in the series. If the game's competitive, you should see 40 plus minutes from him. He's still reasonably priced, and on DraftKings, you can actually get him at small forward as well, which is really useful in this slate.
All right, so let's talk about the auxiliary options. I have to go to Davis Bertans here. We got to talk about Rui Hachimura. It doesn't feel good at all. And now that Gafford's in the starting lineup, we do have some good value from Washington, but Davis Bertans, it's been as ugly as possible. You and I said before the show, he has 7 rebounds on the series and 11 personal fouls. And you pointed out he has as many personals as points over his last 2 games. It's been an absolutely dreadful series for him.
Yeah, it's been really bad. It's been a bad season for him, and it's just getting worse. But he's so cheap that you still have to at least consider him. And it's not because I think he's going to have a good game. It's just because he, like, if his shot's falling, he'll take more shots. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Like, you're seeing the usage rate in this series down around 11 or 12%. If he could actually make some shots, he would get more looks, but he can't make shots. And there's no real reason to give him the ball in that case. Just let Beal do more. But he played 31 minutes in the blowout last game. If that game were competitive, he probably would have gotten to 34 or 35. He's clearly someone who's capable of going out there and just hitting 7 or 8 threes. The reason his floor is so low is that he's just not rebounding at all. He gets no assists. He gets no defensive stats. So you're basically counting on 3-pointers from a guy with a 13% usage rate. That gives you a very, very low floor. But at the end of the day, he's still 3,700 on DraftKings, 3,900 on Fanduel on a 2-game slate that we have a lot of guys we want to pay for in the mid-range and towards the top. So I still think Bertans projects as a good point per dollar value. I just think that, you do have to be concerned with just how bad this guy's playing.
If Smith will play today, I'm assuming we already knew that would be the case. He's another one of those guys that's in a similar price range as Gafford and Rui. Talk to me about all of those 4K guys that you've kind of got grouped together on Washington. And I'll point this out. This just goes to show you the state of affairs in Washington outside of their top 2 players. On DraftKings, Westbrook is 11K, Beal's 9,100. The next closest player is 4,600, half of what Beal is.
And everybody except Gafford out of that group is overpriced, probably.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, you look to the other guys. I think Rui is the one. Well, Gafford, obviously, we already talked about. But then Rui at 4,600 on both DraftKings and FanDuel. FanDuel, he's a small forward, which makes him a little bit more valuable because that's a really tough position to roster 2 guys at tonight. DraftKings, it's still an okay value. He's another one, though. He's just been really disappointing this season. He had a 2-week stretch where he looked really good. He was playing really aggressively, and then he kind of just stopped doing that. And he's back to being like a 0.7 to 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy. He's a low usage guy, doesn't rebound that well, doesn't get assists. It's just been a really disappointing year overall for him. Been a very disappointing series so far, but he is still cheap. We did see in the one competitive game in this series, he played 36 minutes. So, you can look there. You just shouldn't have a ton of confidence in it. Bertans, we talked about. Ish Smith, I think, is a little bit overpriced. If you were looking to go somewhere on Washington, like we talked about Maxey and Howard and Hill on Philly, I think Howell Neto would be the guy there from the Washington side that you should have no confidence in, but he has the clearest path outside of the tertiary options. He played 20 minutes off the bench last game. He actually got up 12 field goal attempts. He just made one of them. I think had 2.5 fantasy points. You certainly shouldn't be investing much money into Neto, but at 3,400, he at least has some sort of a path to success.
Yeah. 4.5 DraftKings points on 1 for 12 shooting.
Yeah, not very good.
It's not great. It's actually pretty remarkable that you can have several guys on the same team in the same game have such awful games.
The result is you lose by 30 points and you score 100.
You lose by 29 points and none of the starters for the opposing team played in the final 14 minutes. So not great stuff there. Anything else for Washington before we move this one on?
No, I guess to sum it up, Westbrook is Westbrook, but I don't think he's a necessity tonight. Beal looks really good. Gafford, I think, is one of the better values, especially on DraftKings, but he even comes with a lot of risk. Hachimura and Bertans are both good values with a lot of risk, and then everything else just looks like garbage.
All right, 210 likes. We're about halfway through the show. Let's get to 250. What's our ratio at? All right, about a 20% ratio. Not terrible. Getting it to 25 would feel a lot better, though. So appreciate all of that. Utah and Memphis. Now, the Utah Jazz got that win over the Grizzlies. That game was super close. I mean, there were 3 minutes left, and it was a tie game. So don't look at this as, Memphis was just trying to keep up all night. Well, I mean, to some extent they were. I mean, they never really had any solid lead, but they lost by 10. This game was tied going into crunch time. So I think that once again, you get another competitive game. They've pushed the Jazz essentially to the limit in terms of what an 8th seed should be able to do to a 1 seed. Utah laying 5.5 on the road, 225.5 total. Donovan Mitchell in his first game back. Remember, second game back. Remember, he was pissed off about not playing in game 1, Adam. And now you have him 2 straight games played 26 and then 30 minutes, getting up a ton of shots. The usage has been there. He was pretty pissed about his poor shooting the night before. But does Mitchell warrant any consideration today? And do we think we continue to see the minutes increase as we go forward?
Definitely warrants consideration here. I mean, it's a 2-game slate. He's averaging like 1.3 fantasy points per minute, both for the season and in his 2 games of the series. And he's not really expensive. So I'm definitely interested here because he is only 8K. He played 26 minutes and then 30 minutes. I think it's logical to think maybe you get like 32, 33 here or more, because we do sometimes see, once guys start getting over 30 minutes, they're just good to go. Like, it wouldn't be surprising if he just jumps up to, 35, 36 minutes. Not that that's the most likely scenario, but I think it's at least on the table. So I do like Mitchell here. I think that there's some risk because, maybe he plays 30 minutes again, but, should, I think, get a little bit of an increase, and he's priced to play 30 minutes. So I think that there is some value there.
Okay. Do you think that what's the ownership right now on Donovan Mitchell? I want to pull this up. So
29% on DraftKings.
Okay. That's really not that high for a 2-game slate for their highest usage player either. Okay. We just got an update. He is 20. Okay. You're actually looking at this most recent update. So
yeah.
Okay. What about Rudy Gobert and this team that has actually given up a ton of offensive rebounds to Memphis, which is pretty crazy. I was shocked to see Utah's defensive rebounding rate so bad in this series.
Yeah, it's been pretty surprising, but from a fantasy standpoint, Gobert has still been good. 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. He was in massive foul trouble, fouled out of the first game, but then he's played about 36 minutes in each of the next 2 games. He's still at a reasonable price tag at 8,800 on Fanduel, but 7,800 on DraftKings. Just stands out as one of the best mid-range options tonight, I think. Should be pretty easy to get him into your lineup, regardless of what kind of build you're going with, whether you're going more stars and scrubs, whether you're going more balanced and going to him at center. He should be pretty easy to fit in. And then I think Mike Conley's another one where he's 8,100 now on FanDuel. I think that's fine, but it's probably about where he should be. You're definitely starting to play with fire at that price point. 7K on DraftKings, though, I think is still a great salary because he's played unsustainably well in this series. He's averaged like 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. But the thing that I think is important is that he's averaging 35 minutes per game. And during the regular season, in the games he played with Mitchell, he averaged 29.7 minutes per game. So you're getting like an extra 5 minutes per game. And he's still at a price point that is kind of similar to where he was at during the regular season. So in the games he played with Mitchell in the regular season, he averaged about 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. Even if he falls all the way back to that production, he's still going to look pretty good in 35 minutes at 7K. And then there is a chance that he does maintain some elevated production because you have Memphis keying in on Donovan Mitchell with Dillon Brooks. They're going to let Mike Conley do a little bit more if he can. So, I think it's reasonable to think he outproduces his regular season averages. I don't think he continues to do what he's been doing, but he doesn't really need to with the salary.
He has been really good, though.
He's been incredibly good.
He's been really good. I mean, even with Mitchell out there, it's not been that big of an issue. You're talking about his permanent production on the season with Mitchell. That's good. It's solid enough, but more than anything, you start to see Quinn Snyder and pretty much any coach take players that might not get considerable playing time in the regular season and ramp that up. If it's close, he's played 36 and 37 minutes in back-to-back games. Listen, Mike Conley averages less than 30 minutes per game on the year.
Yeah, exactly. To me, that's the important thing is that the salary, especially on DraftKings, again, it has on FanDuel, but he's still priced to play like 30 or 31 minutes at his normal production. So even if you just want to completely discount this matchup and how he's done in it so far, the fact that he's going to play 35 or 36 minutes in a competitive game makes him underpriced.
Yeah, certainly does. Now, we knocked out the big 3 here, Mitchell, Gobert, and Conley. This is where we get into the weeds a little bit. You've got Bogdanovich, you've got Jordan Clarkson, whose minutes have been very much not restricted. They've been pulled back in the playoffs. Of course, he played 30 minutes in game 1, but that was without Donovan Mitchell. You get Donovan Mitchell back in the rotation. It looks a little bit more crowded. He's played 22 minutes in back-to-back games. So that price point there at that salary, at the projected minutes seems a little bit prohibitive. Bojan Bogdanovic is another one. 37 minutes last game. You have a pretty good idea night to night what you're going to get from him. But I'll tell you, like, if I'm looking at Bogdanovich and Jordan Clarkson at the same price point, it's to me right now, ownership is almost identical, only a few percent off on DraftKings. Is it any question which one you'd go to?
No, I mean, to me, it's Bogdanovich.
Yeah. Unless you see like tournament value in the sense of Clarkson having that killer upside if he starts knocking down shots, but they're only 4% separated in ownership on DraftKings right now.
Right. And like, I think if we get a game where in the fourth quarter the Jazz are losing, maybe you see Clarkson play more minutes. But even then, you could see Joe Ingles get more minutes instead with like Royce O'Neal going to the bench. I think it's just kind of hard for Clarkson to find minutes right now because you think about like, what do the Jazz need him to do? He doesn't really facilitate all that much anyway, but you have Mike Conley playing 36 minutes regardless. Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley are both going to be more efficient scorers than Clarkson normally. Like Bogdanovich is a better 3-point shooter. Royce O'Neal is a better defender, and he's not replacing Rudy Gobert. So, it's kind of what is Clarkson's role? Like, why is he getting more minutes unless the Jazz are down by a bunch and they throw him in? But even then, he's going to be playing alongside Conley, Mitchell, and Bogdanovich most likely. So he still would see his usage struggle a little bit most likely. So I think it's really tough to get to Clarkson. I am more intrigued by Bogdanovich. He's scoring dependent, which is always scary, but the salary is still affordable, especially on FanDuel. He's another one at small forward at 5,600 that I think stands out. Just because, you should get at least 33 or 34 minutes, played 37 last game. He's averaged around 0.9 fantasy points per minute in the series, 0.8 during the regular season when Mitchell played. So I think, it's just another guy that based on minutes, he looks like a decent value option.
All right. Is there anybody else in this rotation, whether it's in the starting lineup or off the bench, that gives us any semblance of value coming into a 2-game slate where we're likely going to be paying up for at least a couple options?
Royce O'Neal, unfortunately. Just the minutes, 4,400 on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings. Certainly not someone that should be the first or second or third guy in, but I think he'll help you round out some lineups. He's averaging 34 minutes per game in the series, 0.68 DraftKings points per minute. Certainly nothing to get excited about. Not going to be a fun guy to watch in your lineups if you do end up with him. But, on average, he's just someone that projects to give you like 23, 24 fantasy points at, a mid 4K price tag. So it's not the end of the world there. As far as large field tournaments, if you're looking to do something, with a potential high reward and a really low floor, I think $3,200 Derek Favors in place of the very popular Rudy Gobert. You're basically just hoping that Gobert gets in foul trouble or something and you get extra minutes from Favors that lets you leverage against the field. So not a high probability play, but certainly a price point where you can see the path to success for Favors if the game goes mildly like squirrely.
Yeah, someone asked about him in chat. Like the minutes, you can't rely on that. On a per minute basis, Derek Favors is fine. He's a +1 per minute guy. And I don't know, maybe Gobert gets us into some foul trouble and Derek Favors ends up getting some additional run. But I mean, outside of that, what if Favors play 23 minutes in the first game?
Yeah, something like that.
23 minutes, I think it was 23, 24 minutes. That was with Rudy Gobert being in massive foul trouble. If that's the case, you're going to probably lose everything if you don't have Favors, but it's tough to rely on foul trouble getting you where you need to go when we don't know if anyone's going to be in foul trouble to begin with. So
yeah, like if this game just goes according to script, you're getting 12 or 13 minutes most likely from Favors, which even at 3,200, it's pretty unlikely he puts up a score that you're really happy with. But I also don't think though that you need like a repeat of game one where Gobert just like fouls out in 26 minutes. If he loses like 4 minutes to foul trouble and you just happen to get 17 minutes from Favors, there's a pretty good chance he gives you a good score for 3,200.
Absolutely. Jordan Klein producing the show. Let's throw that Hall of Fame up there, fella. Before, I don't know what you're doing over there. I guess the chat's gone rowdy today, gone completely rogue. But it's always a good time before we get to Memphis and close this one out to show off all of the Awesemo avatars and brag for you guys who have come up top in tournaments and won a lot of money recently. Peter Hanley keeps doing huge things. Our own Chris Spags had a big night and a few others as well. If you're wondering, how do I get up here and how do I win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, $100 value, everything included on the site from ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, lineup builder, top pitchers tool, you name it. All of our premium articles and everything else on the site, all created and used by the #1 ranked DFS player in the world, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. I'm going to tell you how to do that. You could, of course, just go to awesemo.com/join, sign up, check out any of the many subscriptions we have for a week, for a month, for a year, one sport, all sport, or you could download the Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar and tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF. That's Hall of Fame at Awesemo HOF. Win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Again, everything on the site. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. You might say that sounds tough, but we get a ton of submissions every day. Doesn't matter if it's the dime, the nickel, the quarter, as long as there's more than 5,000 people, as long as you come in top 3, it doesn't matter what you win or how much you spent. We got you. Let's kick it off with Michael Peterson. Longtime Awesemo viewer says, thanks to Team Awesemo for the hard work you guys put in and the data DFS experience makes it so much more fun. There you go. Look at that. 5,000 plus people, $125 win. Congratulations, Michael. Wayne Shags, I'm not sure, but he said another great night, coming in third place, $600. Congrats to you. And then we've got to go right back to our boy Peter Hanley. Oh no, my fault, Jordan. Unlike the other day, this one 5,000 plus entries. You get your free Awesemo Plus with the avatar right there. Boom, in the mini max, $200 a second. And then Peter Hanley, just this guy every night. It's sick. Black magic, sold his soul to the devil, something like that. $4,000, third place again. Peter Hanley, huge every single night. Like Josh said, our Twitter feeds are just clogged up. And then close it out with our boy Chris Spags, 53K, boom. Huge one from the other night. And you got to love to see, and tied with him is another Awesemo logo. That's $106,666 to the Awesemo crew in the top three, tied for first among three different people. So go to awesemo.com/avatar. Check that out. Awesemo Hall of Fame, doing this every single day. Get your name up there. Get your free month. All right, you ready to close it out with Memphis?
Yep.
John Morant, I'll kick it off with you. He's going to play monster minutes tonight against the Jazz. I would consider this very much a must-win game to knot this up at 2 for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, he's averaging 39.7 minutes per game in the series. There's no real reason to think he's not getting another 39 or 40 tonight. He's played well. He's averaging 1.19 DraftKings points per minute. Obviously, he had that huge game, and I believe it was game 2 when he went for 60-plus fantasy points. My interest level in him varies pretty drastically by site, because on DraftKings, he's 8,400, which I think is fine. I mean, you're talking about 40 minutes from someone averaging well over a fantasy point per minute. 8,400 is a perfectly good price tag. The problem is that it's $1,400 more than Mike Conley. It's $500 more than Ben Simmons. The other guys are just priced so low. Whereas on FanDuel, he's 8,200, but Conley's 8,100, Simmons is 8,700 or 8,800. So everyone there is priced more appropriately. It makes Morant easier to get to. So more of a tournament play on DraftKings, certainly still comes with that ceiling, and the expensive price tag should push his ownership down a bit. But on FanDuel, I think it'll be easier to get to him in a lot of lineups. So he looks good. Just how good depends on which site you're playing on.
All right, so among the top priced guys, I'm just going to throw Morant in here because it's kind of a steep drop off today. So I'm going to include a few of them. Westbrook and Embiid are up there. So is Beal. But then you've got John Morant, Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons, all of these guys at the guard position, right? Point guard. Mitchell has shooting guard position as well. If we're just using DraftKings here, which of the three do you like the most today between Morant, Mitchell, and Simmons, all of whom are separated by no more than $500?
Morant, Simmons, Morant, and Mitchell. It's just when you compare those three, it makes it really tough. It's hard to say Mitchell should be in there because you're getting 40 minutes in a competitive game from Morant. You're getting like 37 from Simmons if the Sixers game is competitive. If the Jazz game is competitive, what are you getting from Mitchell? 32 or 33 is kind of like our guess. So it's just really hard to make up those minutes, I think. So assuming you're asking from like an expectation standpoint, I would put those two ahead of Mitchell. Okay.
We've got to talk about Jonas Valanciunas as well. His price has come to he's at a price point that I think is relatively reasonable. 7,700 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you're getting him at $8,000. Ownership on Joe Val today is 33% projected ownership on DraftKings. What's he at on FanDuel? Let me pull this up. I lost it, but I would assume he is somewhere similar. He is 24.6% on FanDuel. Joe Val in a close game is going to get big minutes as long as there's no foul trouble. He's a huge double-double threat, but he has to go up against Rudy Gobert. Now, again, like I said, his offensive rebounding along with Jaren Jackson has been amazing, particularly last game. The team combined for like 18 offensive boards, but it's never going to be a particularly easy matchup for Joe Val here, even if he got Gobert in the foul trouble in the first game or two.
I'm really, really surprised that projected ownership for Valanciunas is the same as, or even a little bit higher than Gobert on DraftKings right now. I wrote in the deep dive, I thought Valanciunas was a good tournament pivot off Gobert. I assumed Gobert is going to be like twice as owned as Valanciunas. If that's not the case, I would rather just go to Gobert. Valanciunas in this series has only averaged a fantasy point per minute, which on one hand is concerning because it is a tough matchup against Utah. But if you go back to the start of last season and you look at all the games Valanciunas has played against Gobert, including this series, he's averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute, which obviously is good. It's still below his average of 1.34, and it's not surprising that you see some drop off there. But I don't expect him to, keep producing at as low a rate as he has in the series. And you have seen that in competitive games, you're getting 36 plus minutes from Joe Val. So all that looks really good. The reason that I think it's surprising that he is getting as much ownership as Gobert, though, is that Gobert produces, 1.3 fantasy points per minute as well, which is around what you can expect from Valanciunas here. They play similar minutes. Gobert has the easier matchup. So it's just surprising to me that they're getting the same ownership. So as it stands right now, I like Valanciunas, but I would rather go to Gobert. In cash, I prefer Gobert. If the ownership changes between now and lock and you start to get a bigger gap between Gobert and Valanciunas, then I start being more interested in getting more Valanciunas.
What are your thoughts on our boy Dillon Brooks, who, if Dillon Brooks doesn't foul out again, which has just been constant trouble with him this season, I swear every single game he's in foul trouble in some form or fashion. If he doesn't foul out, and of course we're not projecting him to foul out or even get in foul trouble at this rate, where do we go with a guy that's just been super productive as a scorer? Like, he's been really, really productive as a scorer. He's aggressive. He's not big in terms of peripherals, but each day he's coming out there dropping 20 plus real points and putting this team in a position to be competitive. So is Dillon Brooks' price point reasonable to you?
It's reasonable. It's pretty scary because, for one, the matchup is tough, and for two, he's still a scoring dependent player. But in this series, he's got a 31.4% usage rate. And if you go game by game, 33.4, 23.5 in game 2, and then 35.1 in game 3. 24 field goal attempts in game 3, 26 in game 1. You mentioned the foul trouble, and that's not too surprising because Memphis often just has him chase the best player around the floor, and in this case, it's going to be Donovan Mitchell. So he does pick up some fouls, but if he's able to avoid foul trouble, you're getting 36 plus minutes. This is a guy that's not afraid to shoot the ball. I don't think 31% usage is sustainable, but even during the regular season, he had a 26% usage rate. So I don't love the salary there. It makes him more of a tournament play, but I do think it's still cheap enough where he's going to get the opportunities. He certainly can still outperform that salary. It's just getting to where I think he's not underpriced.
All right. Now that's a reasonable take, I think. And look, is Dillon Brooks the type of guy where if you don't have him, you're ever worried at this price?
He had 51 points in game 1. So
I know, and that's kind of why I would, but do you think that's doable again? I guess anything's possible. But.
Yes. I guess the way to put it is I'm not going into if I have a good tournament team and I go in and I know that somebody's chasing me with Dillon Brooks and they need him to really do well at that salary, I'm not expecting to lose, but it's not going to be shocking because the guy's just going out there and shooting a million times.
Right. Morgan asked, what game are you guys going to be heavier on this slate for Draftkings? Well, there's only 2 games. The premium Slack chat will always hit your questions. And those of you guys that are members on YouTube as well with the badges, happy to take your questions as well. You don't have to throw super chats out there if you do not want. So are there any games? Yeah, ridiculous resemblance, Jordan. Are there any games are there any games? Listen to me. What an idiot. Is there one game that you think stands out more than the other just in terms of overall appeal?
On DraftKings, I think the pricing just pushes you toward that Philly-Washington game. The blowout risk is there, but Philly's just so cheap on DraftKings that, when like I said, I haven't finished my lineups, but when I quickly, crunch top lineups before the show, it's just getting so much stuff from Philly. And then still, Westbrook, Beal, and Gafford are all there's 5 guys on Washington that are reasonable plays, really. And then all of Philly is the best plays. So it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if in cash I end up with 6 guys from that game.
Yeah, Josh was saying earlier today that Dillon Brooks had they're calling him evil Danny Green. I didn't really see the resemblance, but then we had a guy in chat in our premium Slack chat, I think it was Iron Mike, posted a side-by-side of Dillon Brooks and Will Ferrell's character from Zoolander. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the picture now. I've seen it.
It was perfect. Jordan, pull that from our premium basketball channel. It was around 3:00 or so.
Yeah,
did you see it?
Yeah,
I
didn't see that. I just pulled Will Ferrell back up, and I know what Dillon Brooks looks like.
Yeah. Oh, the side by side, it might be a top about it is really good. If you can get that up there, forget about Danny Green. This is a locked in comparison. This is no Laffy Bertans comparison. This is the real deal. Jeff Williams asked, would you play Embiid and Gafford together in the 555 on DraftKings? I'm worried about one of them getting the other in foul trouble. Well, I can tell you this much. If you're worried about Gafford getting Embiid in foul trouble, that should not be a concern. Could it happen? Maybe, but it's that is not something you want to be worried about.
Yeah, I'm fine playing them together anyway. There's a chance Embiid has a good game by getting Gafford in foul trouble. There's also a chance he has a good game without Gafford fouling him. And they, in some ways, positively correlate, because if Gafford plays well, it makes it more likely that you get a full allotment of minutes from Embiid. So I don't have any issue with it.
Thanks for the super chat, though. All right. Let's close out the Memphis Grizzlies, and we'll toss this one over to the Live Before Lock crew coming up right after us, going all the way till 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's Josh Engleman, Greg Ehrenberg coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern, right around 5 minutes from now. Kyle Anderson's played well. Jaren Jackson has, it's fine. It's just the minutes are unreliable. But with Kyle Anderson, he's around the same price as Dillon Brooks. He's going to give you more peripherals, less scoring. Do you like, and less fouls, a lot less fouls from Kyle Anderson. Do you like him today against Utah?
Yeah, kind of similar. I feel similarly to him as I do Brooks. I'm like cautiously optimistic because I do think that he's at a price point that he can pay it off. Like you said, he has played well in this series. He's averaging 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. That's what he averaged during the regular season as well. And he's getting more playing time now than he was during the regular season, as you would expect in the playoffs. You're getting 33, 34 minutes from Anderson. So I think he's fine. Again, you'll feel pretty similarly to him as I do Brooks. You kind of get, I don't really want to even say the floor is higher, but the peripherals make it like less likely that you get a, just 10-point game from Kyle Anderson, 10 fantasy point game than Brooks. But the scoring, makes it less likely that he goes out there and throws up 50. So Brooks, I think, a little bit higher ceiling. Anderson, for lack of a better phrase, a little bit safer.
All right, break down the rest of the Memphis Grizzlies for me. Then if you guys have any questions and we have time, happy to answer them before we run into Live Before Lock. Grayson Allen, any guys off the bench that stand out as viable, just dirt cheap options that might get us decent production today?
So you had mentioned Jaren Jackson. I think his salary is very reasonable today. He struggled a bit in the series, only 0.86 DraftKings points per minute. But going back to last year, he's about a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. This year, he was about 1.2 fantasy points per minute in his limited playing time. Fouls are always a risk with him, but on average, you're going to get 28, 29 minutes at only 5,400 on DraftKings, 5,700 on Fanduel. So no issues there. If I'm going to one bench guy, it's Grayson Allen at 3,600. Don't feel very good about it, but he did play 30 minutes last game. He's someone that is capable of getting hot and knocking down some threes off the bench. The closing lineup is normally going to be Brooks, Valanciunas, Jackson, Morant, Anderson. So that makes it hard to get extra minutes from any of these bench guys. But, if Brooks is in foul trouble and fouls out or something, or Jackson, like if one of those guys does, there's a decent chance that Grayson Allen slides into the lineup.
Yeah, it's possible. Look, he played really well last time out, and that's why Taylor Jenkins gave him those minutes, right? He played a ton in the second half because he was just knocking down everything he shot. And that's something you kind of have to bank on for a game like this. But you get that once in a while, Adam, and it's tough to predict. A guy has a really good game, and he gets extended run, and maybe it affects somebody that you had in the starting lineup that's in your lineups that ends up getting fewer minutes because he's not playing well. Like in games like this, particularly spots where they're down 2-1 in the series, they got a home game before they go back to Utah. If one of these guys is playing particularly well, shooting well, and is just benefiting the team, they're going to keep him out there. So it's just tough to predict what it's going to look like before the game starts.
Grayson Allen is like a poor man's Davis Bertans. For him to have a good fantasy game, he basically needs to knock down a bunch of threes. The problem is that he's coming off the bench and isn't even guaranteed to play 30 minutes, whereas Bertans is probably going to be out there for 30 minutes no matter what he's doing. So like both of them have a floor of like 3, but at Bertans, you at least can count on the minutes. So it's certainly not a ringing endorsement here on Allen, but he at least has a path if he's shooting well to getting more minutes.
All right. We are 43 likes away from 350. If you came in late and you forgot to do that, here's your friendly reminder. Hammer that thumbs up and subscribe to this channel because you love us. All right, man, let's close it out with this. You have two games, Philly, Washington, Utah, Memphis. That's all we got on the slate today. Who are your 2 favorite pay-up options? And not raw points. I'm talking about actual, lineup construction, what works the best, and your 2 favorite value options today.
What are we saying pay-up is, like 8K plus?
Yeah, we'll go 8K plus because the only like real pay-ups would Westbrook and Embiid.
Yeah. Embiid and Beal.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I would say Embiid and Beal, and then what was the 2 favorite values?
Yeah.
Gafford and Curry.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot. So they all come from the same game is what you're saying.
Yeah. Like the pricing is just so favorable to the Philly game.
All right. Hey, that'll do it for us. Thanks to you guys for hanging out. As always, we love you. Good luck tonight. Happy Memorial Day. Stick around for Josh and Greg, and Adam and I will be back with you. Running back the same show, different games tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by OddsShopper. Good luck tonight, everybody.
And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, May 31st. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by OddsShopper, and we are here to talk a little bit of basketball. Wizards, Sixers, Jazz, Grizzlies. You've heard about it a lot so far today, but we've got one more hour of coverage. Greg, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, these games, not my favorite overall, but there are some interesting things going on. You know, we've got Daniel Gafford just moved into this starting lineup, so let's see how long it takes for him to get into foul trouble. A lot of talking points here.
We really do have a lot of talking points. Let's start with this talking point right here. 1,270 people in here, 352 likes. If you have not done so yet, please go ahead, hit the thumbs up video, hit the like button on this video. Helps us out a ton. Very little effort from you. And it'll make Greg and I very happy. We'll bring the goods on this one. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell as well. So normally I would get us kicked off talking a little bit about the guards, but given the fact that we got the Daniel Gafford news and this is the playoffs, we're not super likely to be getting any other news. Let's start at the center position. What has this change meant to you in terms of centers? And obviously he is not a center on FanDuel, but how do you feel about Gafford on FanDuel as well? That way we don't have to talk about him in two separate spots.
All right. So first, I'm just going to bring up that we just got an ownership update, and it came out just as we were starting. So if this is the actual number, I assume that Gafford was just going to be mega chalk. That does not appear to be the case right now. And so that kind of changes how I view him. To me now, I just look at him as an excellent value play. When the news first came out, I had two thoughts. It was number one, Gafford is a really strong value play. But then number two, I started thinking about some of the risks involved, and I started to assess like, all right, how am I going to pivot off him if he's chalk? But we right now have him projected for 18% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we have Gafford projected for 33%. That's odd to me that he's that much more popular on FanDuel and DraftKings. But anyway, so at 18% ownership on DraftKings, like that's too low of a number considering his upside.
Yes, I do not agree with that number. I am treating it as if it's double that. I just don't see a scenario where he's owned less than 30% at this point. So I am moving forward as if Daniel Gafford is picking up significantly more ownership on both sites. And that's still not going to stop me from getting to him. I feel like he's just worth the shot, particularly on DraftKings where he's 4,300. To me, there's very little downside with going to Gafford there, other than the fact that you get a little bit less of Joe Val or Gobert or Embiid. It is a particularly strong center slate for a two-gamer, but value is value. And by default, I think we have to be projecting him for 2 or 3 more minutes at a minimum than we were projecting him for before this news happened. Ignoring ownership for a second, he just simply has to be a better play in that time. And it ends up being significantly so given how small the slate is. So I am very, very heavy on Daniel Gafford for today. It doesn't feel fun. I don't trust it at all, but.
What would you, and by the way, if his ownership actually is 18% on DraftKings, ridiculously low. He is by far the best value play on just a points per dollar perspective at that cheap end. I don't even know who else is comparable on this 2-game slate, but what would you assess his risk of getting into foul trouble trying to guard Joel Embiid tonight?
I mean, as high as anybody's risk can be for getting into foul trouble, that's for sure. I'm not super worried about it because they don't really have to care. Like, does it matter if he gets into foul trouble?
I mean, you would think not, except he was already coming off the bench and not playing a lot of minutes in game 1, and he picked up 3 fouls in the first half, and they took him off the court.
It's true. It's true. I assume if they're moving him into the starting lineup, they're going to at least let him eat 2 or 3 of them if he has to out of the gate. Does this make you more interested in Alex Len and or Robin Lopez now? I almost called him Robin Williams, which wouldn't have been right.
I have a feeling one of them might get left out of the rotation today. And that's what makes me really uncomfortable is I don't know who, right? All logic would dictate that Alex Len was the starter. Therefore, he would be the backup now that he's not in the starting lineup. But I have this gut feeling that Len is going to play 0 minutes today.
I have a similar feeling as you. To me, if Len is not starting, he's more likely to not play. But that is a total hypothetical. But in that scenario, that has to make Robin Lopez look pretty appealing to you.
Yeah, so Robin Lopez, and also more of a DraftKings play than FanDuel play where we could roster multiple centers and the pricing is different. But, we've seen a lot of slates where there's just been wild sub 10% value plays that have wound up in optimal lineups over the last couple of weeks during this playoff run. And if I had to pick out the one who I think is most likely for sub 10% ownership today, I could see the path for Robin Lopez. It doesn't mean to go load up on him, but he's somebody who I think that if you're somebody who plays a lot of lineups, it's worth including him in your player pool because there are risk factors here for Daniel Gafford. Number one, foul trouble, most obviously going up against Joel Embiid, but then he also just might not play all that well. That and the Wizards already run goofy center rotations anyway. So Gafford overall is the best value play on the slate by a mile, but if you're looking to pivot off him, Robin Lopez would be the guy that I go to.
Well, I'm glad we feel the same way about this. This could have been, we could have done 30 minutes on this if we were on opposite sides of it, but I do think it makes it pretty easy to just say how we feel about Gafford at this point. How do you feel about the rest of the centers on this slate, though? I mentioned Embiid, Gobert, Joval. If there's another center that I'm not talking about so far, feel free to add him to the list, but we're pretty loaded. And to me, it's the most important position on the slate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 2-game slate and it's tough to find options pretty much everywhere other than center. Like center, just all the best players are at the same position, which is, a little bit annoying. But to me, the primary option is Joel Embiid. if we're taking Daniel Gafford out of the picture. Although on FanDuel, where Daniel Gafford is in the center, the primary option is Joel Embiid in that spot also. But I don't understand the pricing for Embiid on DraftKings. He's gotten nerfed all the way down to 9,500. And if you look at his production from the first 3 games of the season of the series, he crushed last game. But if you're just looking at his box scores from the first couple of games, first game gets in foul trouble, they immediately hook him. Game 2, blowout, and he just doesn't have to play that many minutes. Even game 3 is a blowout, and he doesn't have to play that many minutes, but he still destroys in the limited time he's on the court. Sure, Gafford being on the court, I do think he's the best center on the Wizards, but nobody's slowing down Joel Embiid. So he's overall my favorite pay-up option.
Yeah. Gafford, Lopez, Len, it doesn't really matter what center they're bringing to the table. They could probably bring both. There are 2 of them at the same time, and they're not slowing down Joel Embiid at all today. I'm a big fan of what we've got going for Embiid. Do you hate a center today? Obviously a center that like could be good, not like, I don't want some scrub that doesn't play.
I mean, it's relative, right? So I think if we're just looking at ownership, like I think that Joel Embiid and Jonas Valanciunas are both better plays than Rudy Gobert. Okay. But that doesn't mean I hate Gobert or that I'd recommend fading him. And I mean, other center options, I mean, are we including Dwight Howard in that? Because I wouldn't play Dwight Howard at this point. I wouldn't play Derek Favors, but I don't think there's any one center I look at and be like, oh, that guy stinks, don't play him. I think the guys at the top end are all viable options to me, and it's a 2-game slate. It's hard to really find guys to just outright say like fade him, bad play.
I am with you. I don't have anybody. It's either you're a backup and I'm just generally not interested, or I can't. It's hard for me to see a scenario where, and I'm going to ignore Gafford for a second, but it's hard for me to see a scenario where one of Embiid, Valanciunas, or Rudy Gobert isn't very essential today, given the makeup of the position. The raw points is just going to carry some weight. Gafford now complicates those matters a little bit, but it's just, there's too many really good options. The opportunity cost is way too high on a day like today.
Agreed.
Do we have anything else we want to touch on at center, since we got that out of the way out of the gate?
Valanciunas versus Gobert. I said I prefer Valanciunas. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I am about as indifferent as you can get. I have them separated by less than a fantasy point. I have their odds of being in the optimal separated by less than 1%. They are basically carrying the exact same amount of ownership. So to me, I could flip a coin and get either way. And they're separated by $100. So I see them as similar as you could possibly be for being 2 separate people. They're as similar as Dave Loughran and Davis Bertans.
Oh, wow. So they really are the same then.
Yes, but you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. If I just had them listed as player A and player B, I would just have an even amount of both.
All right, fair. I have a slight lean towards Valanciunas. I think he has a little bit higher of a minute ceiling, just because Rudy Gobert, like Derek Favors, is always going to be in the rotation for the Jazz, whereas Valanciunas, if he's able to avoid foul trouble, which is always a little iffy for him, but they've shown in the playoffs to go out and play him 40 minutes. I don't see any scenario where Gobert plays 40 plus minutes.
Yeah, that would very much surprise me. But barring OT, at which point I probably wish that I had both of them.
Fair.
Anything else you want to touch on at the center position?
I think that encompasses everybody. There's the most off the wall play that I would consider at the position is Robin Lopez. He's picking up single-digit ownership. Other than that, I don't have anything crazier than that.
All right. Well, we knocked one position out. So now it's time to talk about the schedule for the rest of today, which is nothing. There are no shows after this, but that's my plug for today's schedule. Just watch everything that we did today, but do it again tomorrow, because we're going to be packed with content from the moment the sun rises, at least in the United States, until till the moment it sets, because we don't stop ever. We do have some free premium content for today, NBA player rankings. So if you're listening to this show, that one I would assume is incredibly important to you. If you're playing MLB DFS tonight and you are still listening to this show, I appreciate you doing 2 things at once. MLB Top Pitchers Tool, also free. So go ahead and check that out. Now I think that we can slide into the guards. We're seeing quite a few guards near the top of the ownership. Not that there's any surprise there. But the guy that's confusing me the most, and I got to get your thoughts on him right out of the gate. What are you doing with Russell Westbrook He is a gentleman that I am not all that interested in today. Obviously, very much in play. I'm not interested in him in large field GPPs based on his ownership. I want to have less. I want to be clear here. He's clearly still a good play.
Yeah, I do not disagree with that statement at all. We have Russell Westbrook currently projected for 43.6% ownership on DraftKings. That is the highest mark of anybody on the slate. On Fanduel, same deal, over 50% of lineups. And it's a number that, for me, I'm well under on in my current builds. I don't get it. Number one, he is not played well relative to Russell Westbrook over the last couple of weeks. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I suspect fatigue is an issue at this point. He has played the most ridiculous workload over the last couple months of the season. Number two, he had a bunch of games where Bradley Beal was either out or was playing at less than 100%. We just saw ridiculous amounts of usage going to Russell Westbrook. That probably contributes to the fatigue a little bit. Now we have Bradley Beal healthy and in the mix. Three, it's a really tough matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers. The Wizards did not play all that difficult of a schedule down the stretch of the season when he was crushing everybody. And then finally, Russell Westbrook isn't 100% himself. He's listed as questionable on the injury report. I assume he's playing, but I don't think he's going to be 100%. I suspect that if it was a regular season game, he wouldn't even be playing at this point, but the Wizards are down 3-0 in the series, and they kind of need Russell Westbrook. So given what the ownership is, I think that Bradley Beal is a really good pivot. And I understand that Beal is going to be popular, except still less popular than Russell Westbrook. And relative to a 2-game slate, I'd rather be overweight to the field on Beal and underweight to Westbrook.
The piece of this that makes not a ton of sense to me is the ownership of Westbrook in relationship to the ownership of Daniel Gafford, because I would expect for Russell Westbrook, not like he would be the only reason, but if Russ is going to be showing up as the most owned player on the slate on DraftKings right now, and FanDuel, I believe, as well, but DraftKings is more important in this discussion, then you're going to need value to get there because he's 11K. And at this point, I see Daniel Gafford as exceptional value. I would think that just like for Russ to get that high, it would naturally pull Gafford up as well. So it's just kind of a little weird to me. So we're on the same page here.
I'm going to do a fun experiment right now. I'm going to go into Fantasy Cruncher. I'm going to just make 20 lineups where I lock in Russell Westbrook and take Gafford out of the player pool. I'm just curious to see what even pops up in that situation. Because for me also, I don't understand how you get to Russell Westbrook without Gafford. Like there's not that much, unless you're just playing crappy guys. Like there's not that much value.
You've got Seth Curry, Bertans, Danny Green, Grayson Allen. I guarantee is in pretty much all of the lineups that you're about to generate. You're just going to get a lot of ugliness.
All right, let's see. So taking Gafford out, let's make 20 lineups and see where it goes. Yeah, I can't imagine any of these lineups would be anywhat appealing.
Yeah, it's not for me.
A lot of Seth Curry, a lot of Grayson Allen, Derek Favors popping up, George Hill.
And I assume if you do check Gafford, he's in all of them.
Yes. If I'm just optimizing it, no randomness or anything, locking in Russell Westbrook, Daniel Gafford pops up in 100% of lineups. But for the purpose of this, I didn't include Gafford in it, and I just get a bunch of crappy value plays for the most part.
All right, so we got rid of the Westbrook discussion to start. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the other guards. Is it Ben Simmons for you, Mike Conley, Bradley Beal, all of those guys, which is a very reasonable answer as well. Ja Morant, Donovan Mitchell potentially picking up a little bit more run. What are you doing at the rest of the guard? Where do you have your eye most right now?
So this is something, did you see what Scotty Brooks said about an hour ago about Ben Simmons tonight?
No. Brooks talked about Simmons?
Yes, he said that they are considering a strategy of hack a Simmons for stretches of the game. And I'm kind of curious. So, by the way, also, there's a game, I believe that Ben Simmons played against the Wizards when they were coached by Scott Brooks. I don't remember exactly when it was. They did something similar. He shot 26 free throws in that game or something like that. I think there's a chance that we see Ben Simmons shoot a lot of free throws in this game.
Huh. Well, that would be. We might see Alex Len use 6 fouls in that scenario. I'm gonna see if I can query my database quickly to see Ben Simmons like free throw history.
Yeah, and I'll find the exact tweet also. Brooks Simmons. I saw it come across my timeline earlier, and then I'll read off where I could find it. Yeah, here we go. From Noah Levick. Scott Brooks acknowledges the Wizards have talked about putting Ben Simmons on the foul line more. He said that the strategy is definitely in play tonight. Brooks said it's easier said than done, in part because of not wanting stars to get in foul trouble.
29 free throw attempts on November 29th, 2017 against the Washington Wizards. He shot 15 of 29 that day.
I don't think I mean, that's a little extreme. I think it's in the cards though. I think it could happen.
He also, hold on, box score extra. God, it's player name now. Man, I'm so inconsistent with the way that I name my columns. It's so annoying. It's really, really bad. I don't have a total free throws column. God, that's so stupid. All right, so that was 29. So he played 40 minutes that game. He dropped 64 and a half DraftKings points. That is one of 2 times that he's made 15 free throws in a game.
And it was a bad free throw shooting game. Listen, I think this might sound stupid. This was enough for me to put Ben Simmons in a couple extra lineups. It's a 2-game slate. I like Simmons anyway. And sometimes there's, a confirmation bias where you're just looking to like players, but I happen to think Simmons is going a little bit too owned for this particular slate, sub 40% on DraftKings, and then on Fanduel, only 32%. I think that those ownerships relative to this being a 2-game slate, he's somebody I want to be overweight to the field on, and we've just given me extra reason to like a play that I already liked anyway.
So I've got some breaking rumors, non-NBA edition. If you're not looking at Twitter yet, keep your eyes closed. You ready?
Okay. Yep. Oh, I don't actually have to close my eyes, but I'll do it anyway.
Jake Paul's next boxing fight. Do you have a guess who?
It's Tyron Woodley. I already knew that.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, he's going to go to sleep. Right?
I don't know. Tyron Woodley can get really tired really quick.
Tyron Woodley is not Ben Askren. I mean, like, oof, that's a really bad fight for Jake Paul for 2 reasons. One, Tyron Woodley has the power to knock him clean out. That is legitimate, actual knockout power. But 2, nobody gives a shit about Tyron Woodley. That he's not a draw at all. Why would you want to fight someone that's a tough matchup that also isn't fun to promote fights?
Yeah, at least Ben Askren was a draw. I mean, I have to say personally, I don't really care that much about Jake Paul's boxing career. But
I do.
Do you really?
Yeah, because as it succeeds, we get more and more ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, it just doesn't really interest me all that much. Like the Nate Robinson memes were funny, but I don't know. I don't know the difference between the Paul brothers, and I'm convinced I'm convinced most people don't know either. I know there's 2 of them, but
yes.
there's what 18 people in the country that could tell you the difference between the 2 of them.
Like if let's just say Jake Paul knocks Tyron Woodley out. I don't think that is something that I would really expect, but let's just say it happens. He's going to box Connor.
Yeah, hey, I mean, that would be, the one of them's fighting, Floyd Mayweather. It's all these people are kind of tied together, right? The Pauls, Mayweather, McGregor, it's all the same, especially if, where does McGregor's career go if he loses to Poirier again?
He fights Nate Diaz next, would be my guess.
That's
the only fight that you can make with it where it doesn't matter who's coming in on wins and losses. You just let those guys talk shit to each other.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But I mean, Leon Edwards is like a minus 700 favorite over Nate Diaz. I have to think that Nate Diaz coming off multiple losses, Conor McGregor coming off multiple losses, at the very least, that hurts the box office for that a little bit.
Oh, it's not better, but that's why you make that fight then. You can't put either one of them anywhere else. But that I don't understand Woodley getting that fight. That's crazy. It makes no sense to me. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, though. I think that from a business perspective, it seems it would make most sense for him to pick the easiest opponent for the most money, and that would not be Tyron Woodley.
No, Woodley's not going to promote this well. If Tyron Woodley was able to promote this fight really well, Dana White would love him.
Have you ever listened to his music?
Just briefly once the most recent stuff dropped. It was fine.
No, it's the Tyron Woodley music is bad. Some of it's
fine.
See, we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but I have this theory that he just made really bad music, and he just went to a bunch of producers and other rappers and stuff, and they said, he asked them like, "Hey, is this good?" And like, you're gonna tell a world champion UFC fighter to their face that their music sucks? So we just had a bunch of people who were afraid to say no to him, and that's how he just ended up putting out a lot of really crappy music.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not trying to buy his albums or anything like that, but it wasn't any better or worse than I was expecting.
It was, yeah, I mean, I definitely had low expectations, but it was bad.
Right. All right, back to the guards. Sorry for derailing that, but we still have 35 minutes left here, so I don't really feel too bad about it. Any guards that you're seeing picking up ownership that you don't totally agree with that aren't named Russell Westbrook?
First of all, let me refresh and see if we have a fresh ownership update, because I'm curious to see if anything has changed with Gafford, and that is a no. So, all right, guards. I mean, once I'm this low on Westbrook relative to the field, that's going to make everybody, especially for a 2-game slate, it's kind of hard to single out any other player to look, like they're way overowned. But John Morant, I think the ownership is a little bit too high. It's still a tough matchup against the Jazz. And I think a lot of this hinges on whether Jonas Valanciunas gets in foul trouble or not also. Because if Valanciunas is off the court, then just a lot of the shots have to go to John Morant. But if Valanciunas is out there, on the court, playing well, is able to avoid foul trouble against Rudy Gobert, then a lot of the offense ends up running through Valanciunas. And then also you just look at some of the other pay-up options on the slate. And I think Morant overpriced, in my opinion, even with the extended minutes he's getting in the playoffs. And there's other guys I'd rather pay up for. I'd rather get to Ben Simmons. On FanDuel, Mike Conley is really expensive, but at least on DraftKings, I'd rather take the $1,400 salary savings from Conley.
Okay, we got to hit on a couple of questions here. One from our premium Slack asking about remaining salary. It's not something I pay attention to on a 2-game slate. I don't care how much I leave. It's going to be a lot, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is it matters more on DraftKings than FanDuel from a standpoint of, if you're leaving $2,000 on the salary on the table on DraftKings, you've probably made a mistake somewhere. If you're doing it on FanDuel, it's not an issue.
Agreed. It's just on a 2-gamer, and it depends what contest you're in too. Like if it's a 100-person contest, you probably don't need to be leaving $200,000 or $2,000 on the table. If you're in a 50,000 entry contest, feel free to leave a lot more. Like what you're trying to do by leaving so much salary on the table is to win with less duplication. And you probably will do that if you've got 2,500 on the table or something like that. You also don't need to do that for 100 people.
The other thing too is because of the positionality on FanDuel, it's not that crazy to think. We've seen Jaren Jackson up and down all season. He's 5,700. Is it crazy to think that Royce O'Neal outscores Jaren Jackson Jr.? It's not likely, but it's not crazy to think the $1,300 price difference that Royce O'Neal ends up outscoring him. There's only so many power forward options. And the same goes for the small forward position. Kyle Anderson is the most expensive small forward on FanDuel. Is it crazy that Bojan Bogdanovic outscores him? No, not really. And there are no other options at the position because of the difference in flexibility versus DraftKings. So that's why on FanDuel, it's not hard to envision a scenario where a lineup leaves a bunch of salary on the table and still ends up being the first place lineup.
Now we got to work our way through some super chats. So this one's coming in from Suave. Favorite shooting guard on FanDuel?
Let's see. Bradley Beal.
Okay. Mine's Seth Curry. That's obviously like a different kind of answer to this question. I would rather I actually think Donovan Mitchell is getting slept on a little bit at 8K, but that's neither here nor there. But I think that Seth Curry is the bigger linchpin on FanDuel than anyone else.
I don't understand how Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are both picking up this much ownership on FanDuel.
Neither do I. I mean, I have them both as over-owned and not all that frequently in those lineups. So we'll see where we end up there.
Yeah, I like even at his ownership, I'm overweight to Beal. The two most rostered shooting guards for me on FanDuel, Beal and Seth Curry. But I mean, are people really playing that many lineups with Beal and Westbrook together? I tend to think not, but we shall see.
This one makes no sense to me, so I'm not entirely sure why we would be answering this question. The question is, give me the prop bet of the night from Prop King. How are you the king if you need it?
Let's see.
Are you the king in the north where it's not real?
So I'm going to go to, we do have something that's really cool on Awesemo.com. We do have OddsShopper, and something that I like about it, if you're somebody who does like to bet on props, like the prop king himself, is that based on the projections we have, and then compared to the spreads that are available at various books, I can't mention individual ones due to YouTube issues, but if you go to OddsShopper, you could actually look at the ROI for the expected bets based on our projections, relative to the numbers that are up at different books, and it'll highlight whichever one is the best book that is available in whatever state and whatever the rules and regulations are wherever you are. So something that stands out right here. Oh, this is actually convenient because there's somebody who I said that I'm underweight to the field on. Ja Morant, 25.5 is his prop at the majority of books. So 25.5 under is we have with a 71% expected win rate and a 38.9% expected ROI. So I would look at that. I look at those numbers and I say, if you want me to give you one prop bet based on the tools we have here, it would be a Ja Morant under 25.5 points.
I'll give you guys Mike Conley under 7.5 assists. You're able to find that at plus 119. If you're lucky, you could use OddsShopper to find out where that is. 77% chance to win, 68% expected ROI. So there's your prop bet of the night. And Prop King, you should go ahead and change your name because that is false advertising, friend. Preston Spencer with a 3v3, no site given, so that'll help. Allen, Anderson, O'Neal, Harris, Tobias Harris, Hill, and Gafford.
All right, so I have it in front of me here. So Preston Spencer, Allen, Anderson, O'Neal, Tobias Hill. That is Tobias Hill and Gafford.
Yeah, I don't think that one's close either.
Those salaries don't even seem to make sense to me in my head.
Not even remotely. It's 3 value plays against a pay up option, a pay down option, and a now starting center.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So there we go. Preston Spencer, Tobias Harris, George Hill, Daniel Gafford.
Every king has a council per Prop King. Yeah. Well, that's not us. Not a lot of kings out there paying for their information like that. You should just I don't know, kill us or something, or blackmail us into providing that sort of information. Suave, bringing another super chat to the table. Would it be stupid to fade Beal and Westbrook on FanDuel? No, I find it to be the exact opposite.
It's a 2-game
depending on
slate.
what your definition of fade is. I guess.
If you're playing 20, 30 lineups and you have 0% of both of them, yeah, that's risky business. But yeah, I mean, I've already said I think Russell Westbrook is going wildly over-owned. Josh thinks he's going over-owned as well. I like Beal. Josh likes Beal a little bit less, but no, it's not crazy at all to make a lineup that doesn't have either of them.
Oh God, I had something I wanted to say and now I don't remember what it was. Fading definition 0%. Oh, the interesting thing would be if you were fading Beal and Westbrook that aggressively, it almost has to make some of those Sixers guys look bad too. Like you're probably not getting to 2 of the 3 of. You probably need to focus on the Jazz Grizzlies game a little bit more.
Yeah, it's hard to envision a scenario where, say, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons all score 50 plus fantasy points or something like that, and then Westbrook and Beal both suck. Because for those guys to go off, the game we have to figure is somewhat competitive. So in terms of lineup construction, it is hard to play a bunch of lineups where you don't play either Westbrook or Beal. Right. For an individual lineup, though, if you're not playing either of them, I agree with what you said. That would end up being a stack of the Jazz Grizzlies game optimally. And
I mean, I think they both look pretty good. I think the expectation is probably pretty close to one of the 2 being in an optimal lineup on FanDuel today. So Simmons, Curry. Yeah, right. Exactly. Simmons, Curry, Green, Harris, Embiid starting lineup for the 76ers. So no surprises there. That was a long way around guards and such. Do you have any other guards you want to talk about? We got into questions and Jake Paul and all that other good stuff.
Let's see. Who did we not bring up yet? Morant, I said I think he's a little bit over-owned. Let's see. What is the current ownership on? Oh, we just got a fresh run of ownership, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm refreshing that and seeing what stands out. Russell Westbrook, still really popular. Daniel Gafford, still 18%. Okay. Holding true on FanDuel. Gafford, 32% now from 33%. So Gafford's ownership's actually gone down on FanDuel.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyway, we kind of just did this promo already, but I do want to let you guys know that that logo that you see in the top right corner of the screen is for OddsShopper, and that is where we just tried to send you to check out all of these props that you could look at. But it's not just props. If you want to get game lines, you want to track your bets, get notifications when lines move, you can do all of that at OddsShopper.com. You don't even have to go to OddsShopper.awesemo.com anymore. That was news to me as of fairly recently. So there you go. Go to OddsShopper. You should just do that. It's the first place that I go each morning to check what the lines are going to be. If you want to get a little bit more insight on player prop bets, check out Eric Lindquist's player props tutorial. It's on our YouTube channel. Pop over, do that. Don't watch it now, but watch it at like 7:01 when this ends.
Yeah, and also we could use more evergreen content, and that is something that's really, really helpful. And it pains me to go push over the chalk master himself, Eric Lindquist, but. For sure, also, I've said this before, but Eric Lindquist has almost no followers on Twitter, and that shouldn't be the case. So people go follow at Eric Lindquist on Twitter while you check out his video also.
He should have literally no followers, not almost zero. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, that was the claim. I'm just shaming people who follow him.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to be wrong there. We got another super chat here from Soul Dope. So it's 9v9. Are you ready?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's not actually a 9v9. It's 3v3, but I mean, it's Soul Dope. So you really never know. Mitchell, Green, Jaren Jackson, Beal, Bogdan, Bertans.
This is going to drive you crazy that he wrote Bogdan, isn't it?
More than you would ever know.
No, I knew exactly. As soon as my first thought, even before when I was thinking about how I have these players projected or what the best plays are, I was thinking that, oh, Josh is going to love that he wrote Bogdan instead of Boyan, because we had that come up on the show the other day. It was a little confusing, but at least for today, we know that there's only one Bogdanovich on the slate. So to me, it is the Beal, Boyan, Bogdanovich, and Davis Bertans side.
I agree. And it really just, my first thought when I read it was like, holy shit, are the Hawks on the slate? Like, I don't even remember talking about them. That's how it gets you. That's how it gets you. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. All right, let's sum up forwards quickly so we could just take a lap through all of the inevitable questions that are coming in. My favorite forwards for today, in no particular order: Tobias Harris, Rui Hachimura, Davis Bertans, and Danny Green. That is a DraftKings answer. I'm curious to know, what are you looking at forward today?
Yeah, so forwards, Tobias Harris, pretty hard to disagree there. Even though we kind of made fun of him a little bit earlier before, Grayson Allen, I do think, is a viable value play, is one of the guys that you didn't mention before. I just don't think that he's quite as strong of a value play as Daniel Gafford. I do think Bertans is a good value play since he's starting, but mostly agree with all the guys you just said.
Okay. We don't have any other super chats coming in. So we do have a bunch. Anybody that you think is wildly overowned? I have one, and it's kind of random, but I really don't like Joe Ingles today at 5,300, and he's got 18% ownership on the last look. I don't want that at all.
Let's see. I'm just going through the latest ownership now. So this is going to be DraftKings specific, and it's funny because he was just in one that the answer to a question we just had before. But on DraftKings now, we have Boyan Bogdanovich, not Bogdan Bogdanovich, Boyan Bogdanovich, now project for 24% ownership. That seems a little rich to me.
Okay. All right, let's touch on some of these questions here coming into Premium Slack. Let's see where we're at. Tank Forever says, assuming both secondary players don't foul out, Beal and Gafford or Harris and Brooks on FanDuel?
Which is, by the way, a funny way to phrase the question, because even if both of them fouled out, right, we'd still be looking at it the same way, wouldn't we?
Yeah. I would take Beal over Harris then.
So yeah, Beal, Gafford, Harris, Brooks. So now, first of all, I like Beal more than Harris. I like Gafford more than Brooks. So there we go, Beal and Gafford.
Yep. DK 2v2. Simmons and Allen, Conley and Green.
Simmons and Allen.
Agreed. How do you feel about playing the big three from Philly in the same lineup on DK? I don't love that construction because you almost have to get Beal or Westbrook coming back in it as well.
You know what's funny? So we had this exact same question. I can't remember if it was with you or not. Was it me and you doing the show, or was it or was I
love that you think that I remember these shows.
Yeah, so it might have been, I think it was me and you. So we did an exercise where we locked in Embiid, Simmons, Beal, and Harris together, and then saw which optimal lineup would come up with that. And it actually ended up being a really good lineup for that slate.
Yeah.
So let's do that again.
Like if you're to get all three of them, you have to get to Beal, because I don't think that you can conceivably get to Embiid as well. They can't, those three guys from Philly can't get there without a lot of success from Washington.
All right. So Simmons, 7,900, Beal, 91, Tobias Harris, 73. It does help a little bit that Joel Embiid's only 9,500 for this slate, but yeah, so you can't do it with Westbrook, I don't think. With Beal, though, it's 4,000 average remaining salary. That's a tough number on this slate. There's just not very many cheap value plays to go to. I guess this would be one of those lineups where you have to throw Robin Lopez in just for the salary savings. But I mean, how many players do you really like for this slate that are priced below 4,000?
I'll be honest. This particular lineup that just showed up, Simmons, Harris, Embiid, and Beal locked, I don't hate. The other four guys in the lineup are Bertans, Gafford, Grayson Allen, and Rui. So a full-on Wizards, Sixers onslaught with just pay down Grayson Allen.
That feels like a really chalky lineup also.
Probably.
I agree. Individually, I don't think that's a terrible lineup. It would have, there's no way to do it with Westbrook though.
261.8. That is only like 3 points off of my optimal. So it's viable. I just don't think it's particularly likely that all three guys from Philly get there.
I mean, it's a 2-game slate though, right? So it's not like it's not as if we need all it's not as if we need all three of those guys to have massive games. And then also think about the potential lineup constructions where that ends up being optimal. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance to this now. Here's where that lineup works. Jazz blow out the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I guess. I just look at it like there's too many decision points that become problematic. Like if one of Gobert or Valanciunas has a big day, they're going to be I think they end up being necessary. If Donovan Mitchell just outscores Ben Simmons, that lineup is immediately, I don't want to say dead. It can still be a good lineup, but Donovan Mitchell passing Ben Simmons means that you're not getting to the optimal $100 of difference in salary. That's where I think you start to get into like a little bit of a tricky scenario. If Mike Conley outscores Tobias Harris, like just little stuff like that, where we're talking about a lot of individual coin flips that have to go your way.
I have an off the board goofy play for that lineup, and that would be D'Anthony Melton. Because if that's a situation where Wizards Sixers game stack ends up being optimal, 2-game slate, then I think, like I said before, one of the things that probably happens is the Jazz blow out the Grizzlies. And in that case, D'Anthony Melton only 3,200 on DraftKings. I could see him winding up in the optimal, and he's currently projected for, I assume, very little ownership. He's not somebody that I considered until now, but yeah, I mean, 11% ownership for a 2-game slate. That would be the blowout play I consider there.
Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. DK single entry. Ben Simmons and Brooks, or Embiid and O'Neal.
Let me pull up those names again, because I just who's the question from, just so I could scan and see where we're at.
TRD.
Okay, I found it. All right, so Simmons and Brooks or Embiid and O'Neal. That is Embiid and O'Neal for me.
That is Simmons and Brooks for me.
We are at odds.
You're gonna get a lot out of that one, TRD.
I think it's the first thing we've disagreed on today, though.
I know we've been pretty lockstep so far. Wizards lineup, by the way: Westbrook, Beal, Bertans, Hachimura, Gafford. I think we kind of knew that one. Simmons, this is from Mr. Moneybags, Simmons and Beal or Westbrook and Anderson in a DK GPP. That one is not close for me.
Yeah, Simmons and Beal.
Yeah. What's the max players you'd have from the Philly-Washington game in your lineup for a large DK GPP? That would be 7.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could go 8, but no, it would have to. Never mind. It has to be 7.
Yeah.
So
7.
yeah, there you go. So 7, yeah, 7 of 8. There you go.
Knowing what that looked like when I locked those guys and it was 7, then I expect that there would be 7 in 150 just because.
Yeah, and would you be? Let me look through the lineups. I don't think I have any that are 7 players of Jazz of the Jazz Grizzlies game. I almost certainly have some from Wizards Sixers though.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if I could get to 7 Jazz Grizz lineups. Oh boy. Jets world. Come on, man. Rui and Grayson Allen or Bertans and Royce O'Neal. Ugh. It's the $555 DK GPP.
Ooh. That is it's Bertans and O'Neal though.
Rui, Allen, 61, Bertans, O'Neal. It is Rui and Grayson Allen for me. Not like I'm super confident in that combination, just FYI.
I think the Bertans side brings a little bit more upside, but oh man, could Davis Bertans go and shit the bed and hurry? Like Bertans has to be I don't know what happened to him this season. Remember, he had some actual upside in big games last year. I think let me look at his historical pricing in Fantasy Cruncher, because there were some times last year where I remember Davis Bertans as a chalk play, maybe even as high as like 6,000, and he actually opened the year at 7,000 this year. Yeah, last year 6,200. His price, for a while we saw Davis Bertans over 7,000 last year. He stinks now. I don't know what it is. He just got paid and now he's like, I just stand 40 feet away from the basket. I touch the ball, I chuck it. And he brings nothing else. Sometimes the shots go in and there's upside in him, but he does absolutely nothing else.
Brad Levine asked, who is an under the radar captain for DraftKings Showdown? I'm going to assume you mean in Washington, Philly. So I'm going to run a quick crunch just to take a look at it. It's not something that I've looked at all.
I made lineups for the first game, but not the second one yet, just because it was something that, number one, I wasn't sure if I was going to do, but number two, I figured I'd have time after the show. So let me look at the most recent ownership.
I mean, given our ownership on the main slate, I'm guessing the answer is Daniel Gafford, but I would not advocate for that. I can't. I think it would ultimately end up being a lie. Do we not? We only have it for the other one, Utah, Memphis.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Gafford.
Well, like he didn't ask the question, so I'm just gonna. Or he didn't ask the question with teams, so I'm just gonna run it now for Utah, Memphis, since that's the one we actually have content for. Because otherwise, I'm just making it up on what I thought he's asking.
Yeah, that is.
Really helpful.
I mean, literally the way the question is asked, there's no way to know who's under the radar when we don't know what the ownership is. But I would guess Daniel Gafford, like you said, based on the other data we have. But will that actually be the case in reality? Who knows? But for the later slate, that's the one that's bigger. Ooh. So we have Valanciunas, Gobert, Conley, Mitchell. They're all picking up significant captain ownership.
I like Mitchell. I like Mitchell a lot.
Yeah, at 7%, Mitchell. I think that he's going a little bit too low owned, especially considering he's cheaper than Morant, and Morant has double the ownership. I think that is a reasonable enough pick. As for cheap guys,
it's he's officially answered that it's Philly game now, so now we can also not care.
Okay, all right, Gafford.
All right, let's see. All right, no other super chats that I can see. So back to questions from chat. How do you guys feel about setting lots of rules with crazy randomness on a slate like this? I wouldn't set any.
I I think the only rule that I would set is to not have Robin Lopez, Daniel Gafford, and Robin Lopez, and Alex Len, Robin Lopez, and Daniel Gafford in the same lineup. Although, actually,
I can't imagine that's going to pop up.
It's also not possible anyway because I forgot Gafford's only center eligible now. I'm pretty sure, right?
I have no idea. That sounds right to me, though.
Yeah, Gafford's only center now.
Yeah,
so doesn't matter. Gafford was power forward also at one point.
Yeah, on a 2-game slate, I'm not setting a single rule. It doesn't like once the points are scored, it doesn't know that these guys come from teams and stuff. You can it can be Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors today, depending on how this breaks. I wouldn't want to box myself out of anything. I like to do that on bigger slates because you're not trying to corner the market on ultra pay up options normally.
Yeah, if this was say an 8-game slate and all of the Philly guys projected well, I wouldn't want to have Simmons and Embiid and Harris in the same lineup.
Right,
2-game slate, it's whatever.
Mm-hmm. Is Ingles okay for a last piece in a DK GPP?
Anybody? I mean, as a last piece for a 2-game slate, I don't have an issue with Ingles. Who else would be? Let me look at who else is in the price range to see if there's somebody else.
I have 8 other guys that I think I would rather take.
All right, so Joe Ingles' price point is
5,300.
It's high. Let's see, who would I prefer at that salary? Jaren Jackson.
I would rather
Jr.
have Royce O'Neal, Rui, Danny Green, Seth Curry, Daniel Gafford, Jaren Jackson. If I have that extra 100.
Yeah. So if you have the extra 100, it's Daniel Gafford. If I'm going cheaper, then I mean Gafford, as long if position is an issue there, Gafford is the guy I project for the most fantasy points there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's is he okay? Yeah. Joe Ingles is a perfectly acceptable guy to be in a lineup. I don't think it's a particularly good use of that roster spot, but that's just me. He has the extra 100 for Triple J. Yeah, I would absolutely go to Jackson.
Yeah, agreed.
I have him 3 times as likely to be in the optimal.
I agree that Jackson is a much better play than Joe Ingles, and not to get too far off the point, but I cannot believe that Jaren Jackson Jr. is not better at this point in his career.
Big super chat from Anthony Davis with the question: would you separate Beal and Westbrook or Green and Thibault? No.
I don't like Matisse Thybulle particularly as a play for this slate, but that is beside the point. But I think we both agreed that Russell Westbrook is going too highly owned. So a lot of these guys are not necessarily my favorite plays, but once again, I don't think you have to set some kind of rule to not get them in the same lineups.
No, I mean, I think their salaries alone will limit them from at least Westbrook and Beal will limit them from showing up together more often than not. Wouldn't be my optimal construction. You're going to have probably Tobias Harris and maybe Ben Simmons coming back in that lineup as well. And then for Green, Thibault, I mean, they don't complement each other at all. But if Matisse Thybulle is going to get there today, it's probably because he has 7 steals, and that doesn't stop Danny Green from shooting. What about Seth Curry being potentially forced in the point guard role if Washington sends Ben Simmons to the line and he is throwing bricks? Yeah, Ben Simmons isn't leaving the floor in this scenario.
No, and the other thing too is if Ben Simmons makes 50% of his free throws, that's not all of a sudden that they have to yank him off the court. And also, first of all, if they're actually going to go foul Ben Simmons the entire game, it's probably not a great strategy. Ben Simmons is not a good free throw shooter relatively, except, see, what did he make for the season?
It's also a great thing for DFS because I don't care how efficient he is. I'm just happy he's taking the attempts.
And also think how many possessions that adds to the game if they're just immediately fouling him when he touches the ball. But Ben Simmons for the year, he shot 61% from the free throw line. The Sixers offense for the year, let's see how many points did they score.
That's 1.2.
It's very good offense.
It would be the best offense in the league.
Yeah, the Sixers as an offense this year averaged, let's see, about 1.11 points per possession. So, I mean, if they're actually going to send him to the line, that's just bad defense. They're giving the Sixers all kinds of additional points over the course of however many free throws he shoots.
Well, it does make sense because he is a terrible coach.
That is true.
So there is that. Morant and Curry or Embiid and Thibault in the DK GPP.
Morant and Curry or Embiid and Thibault. Boy, there's a lot of guys in that I don't really like all that much, but I guess it's Morant and Curry for me. I don't really like Thibault for this slate.
It's Morant and Curry for me as well. I would like Thibault a lot more if he wasn't already 13% owned.
Yeah, and the other thing also with Thibault is some of his numbers have been boosted in this series just because of the scores of the games and the fact that he gets to play garbage time and just rack up defensive stats against just whatever bogus backups the Wizards have.
Yeah, he's not best deployed in this series because Washington's offense sucks. Like, you don't need him running around all that much. You could just let everybody else do their normal stuff. If Bradley Beal is going to beat you, like, you let that happen, I guess. But if Russ wants to go, like, he's not going crazy because this is a terrible matchup for him because he stinks. That's neither here nor there.
No.
Looks like we've made our way through every question in Premium Slack. YouTube chat I could hit on if I needed to. We've got 5 minutes to go until lock. Is there anything that you want to talk about right now that you haven't gotten a chance to mention so far? And by the way, we are only 23 likes shy of 500, so hit that thumbs up if you can.
Let's see. I'm going through all my players. I feel like we've talked about just about everybody here. Yeah, we've hit on all those guys. All right, pulling up my DraftKings exposures now. Let's talk about just somebody who I like less in the field also because we haven't brought him up yet. Dylan Brooks is. Let's see. Actually, let me look up his latest ownership to make sure that it's still pretty substantial. Yeah, 26% on DraftKings. Dylan Brooks is 24% on Fanduel at 7,100. Earlier, when you had brought up guys that I thought were going too highly owned at the guard position, Dylan Brooks would be the next guy that I didn't mention.
Jeremiah Johnson with the question in Premium Slack: who's your points per dollar favorite play of the slate? I think we have the same one here.
Daniel Gafford.
Correct. I'm a Tulsa dog. Asked me what's in the Yeti. That would be water. Talk about a pretty depressing answer. But yeah, water. I feel very dehydrated. So I'm drinking a lot of water. That's what it's here for, I guess.
Cheers.
Oh, water bros. There we go.
How cool are
there we go. Highly recommend getting an office style water cooler.
Yeah, I just go to Costco because you get like 1 billion water bottles for $2.
Well, I like the planet more than you, man. Just keep using all that plastic, dude.
I'm not going to be here that much longer anyway, so it is what it is.
That's fair.
Drink all the water bottles.
I would do if it wasn't for my wife, I would buy that exclusively. Wouldn't care at all. But she's into like reusable plastic bags and stuff like that, and reusable it's being a good person, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, that's certainly not me.
Oh, favorite match from the AEW pay-per-view.
Dude, I don't know what that is.
That was my question. It's really weird to me. You strike me as someone that would be a wrestling fan.
No, I'm like the antithesis of that. That does nothing for me. I'd rather watch my mom beg for mercy. There's so many things that would be higher on my to-do list than watch wrestling.
Well, to be fair, I've seen her do that already. It's pretty fun. Oh man, I couldn't help myself on that one. Favorite match for me from last night. The Bucks Kingston Moxley match was pretty fun. It kind of trailed off there. I loved the Britt Baker match. Probably, honestly, it might be the pre-show match with Serena D, but my answer is the Bucks Kingston and Moxley.
Word.
Let's see. Greg looks like a guy who loves professional wrestling and Harry Potter.
I don't like either of those things.
Yeah, I've never read one of those Harry Potter books. I tried watching the first movie relatively recently, and they're like legitimate children in that movie, and it was just like I don't feel right watching.
Yeah, I mean, I was into it when I was a kid. I read the first couple of books, but I never finished it.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. What else we got? I think that's it. I think we're about there. 6:59 p.m. and 21 seconds. So we're coming down the home stretch. Not much else. Chat certainly enjoyed my rebuttal to your mom comment, which no surprise to me there. Greg looks like Morty. I can see you should wear yellow shirts.
I don't like. I wear a lot of blue shirts. I don't think I own anything that's yellow. I have some like anime shirts I kind of like. I've got some cartoon character shirts. I don't think I have anything that's yellow though. Like I don't have any SpongeBob shirts.
I got one or two. They're relatively new. Lakers shirt, Jazz, NBA Jam shirt. A lot of stuff from Homage, but that's neither here nor there because it's 7:00 and there are no more shows on the Awesemo.com YouTube network. So any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, good luck today, guys. Follow Eric Lindquist on Twitter at Eric Lindquist.
Follow Eric Lindquist on Twitter at Josh Engleman, and you will have a great time reading tweets. I promise you that. Good luck tonight, everybody. Have some fun. Win some money. We will talk to you again tomorrow morning. Adios.